Welcome to Eastern Romance Tales, where every story is a journey of the heart. Let's dive into today's tale. Book 4 Chapter 196. Xie Lian sharply retorted, I know no one will come. What concern is it of yours? Bai Wuxiang slowly asked in return, then why did you deliberately stab yourself with a sword? Are you vexed with someone? Currently there is no one who would grieve for you. Xie Lian continued to reply, I am willing. What concern is it of yours? Bai Wuxiang said, suppose someone comes to help you, what do you intend to do? If no one comes to help you, what do you intend to do? Oh! Xie Lian cursed, why do you speak so much? I spit upon you. What concern is it of yours? What concern is it of yours, huh? His words grew increasingly rude and vulgar, and his tone also grew more and more daring, but he could only repeat these few words no matter how he cursed. Bai Wuxiang seemed to be provoked by him into laughing aloud, sighing, foolish boy. He turned around saying, enough. In any case, it is only the last day, letting you be foolish for a bit longer, struggling a bit longer is no matter. Anyway, no one will come here to give you a cup of water, or help you pull this black sword out. Remember. Bai Wuxiang reminded him once more, tomorrow, after the sun sets, if you still do not activate the human face disease, the curse will descend upon you. Xie Lian listened in silence, unmoving. On the third day, Xie Lian still lay in that human-shaped deep hole at the crossroads, his posture unchanged. The group of people today was no different from the group of people yesterday. They all walked far around him, all going their own way. Although the matter of a strange person falling from the sky had been reported to the authorities, for those who heard it was very likely a plague god, and moreover he had also committed no offense, merely lying there like a dead man, refusing to leave, the officials reluctantly said they would review it again in a few days. This intention, stated plainly, was to ignore it. Who knew what he would turn into in the coming days? A few curious children ran over, squatting at the edge to look at the person in the hole, picking up a twig, secretly poking and prodding, but Xie Lian was like a dead fish, without the slightest reaction. They found it endlessly novel, and were about to try throwing something at him when their parents discovered them, scolded them harshly, and then dragged them home by the scruff of the neck. The water vendor from yesterday also continuously looked in this direction. Noticing that Xie Lian had not drunk a single drop of water for a day and a night, his lips dry and cracked with a layer of dead skin, the vendor looked on with pity, seemingly intending to scoop a cup of water and offer it, when suddenly his wife poked him with her elbow, the bowl overturned, and he had no choice but to pretend not to see anything. It was as if the sky also wished to join in the commotion. Past noon, tiny raindrops began to patter down. The street vendors hurriedly packed up their stalls, and the passers-by also shouted to quickly go home, rushing away one after another. After a while, the rain fell heavier and heavier. Xie Lian's face was washed over by the rainwater, becoming paler and paler, his entire body soaked through. The white-clad figure silently appeared before Xie Lian. The other people on the road seemed not to notice this peculiar figure. Bai Wuxiang looked down at him from above, saying, the sun is about to set. Xie Lian remained silent, not speaking. Bai Wuxiang said, you are not a plague god. Yet they would rather believe you are than believe you are not. Before, you defied heaven and challenged the sky to bring rain to Yangon. But now they begrudge you even a single cup of water. 100 swords pierced your heart, purely out of utter helplessness, yet now they do not even wish to do something as simple as helping you pull out a sword, all deeming it too difficult. He said pitifully, I told you no one will help you. In Ta Lin's heart, a frantic sound screamed, admit it. He is right. No, truly none, there is not a single one. As if he heard the roar within his heart, Bok Vo Tuong, a faint smile playing on his lips, extended his hand and tightly gripped the sword's hilt, saying, but it does not matter. If they do not help you, I will. Having spoken, he exerted a slight force, and with a flick of his hand, withdrew this black sword from Ta Lin's abdomen. With a clanging sound, he cast it down beside him. Immediately, the white-clad figure amidst the curtai of rain chuckled softly, as if his purpose fulfilled. He withdrew, entrusting the mission to one identical to himself, before vanishing. After the black sword was extracted, Ta Lin's wound was laid bare, haphazardly washed by the torrential rain. The sensation of numb pain diffused throughout his entire body for the second time. This was his sole feeling at this moment. Stones crunched underfoot, a sudden rapid splashing sound drawing near, as if another traveler was hurrying to escape the rain. Yet, Ta Lin could no longer discreetly take notice as he had before. He slowly sat up. To his surprise, no sooner had he stood up than he heard a piteous ah, as a person right beside him tumbled head over heels. The person was carrying a very large object on his back, and on his head, he wore a wide-brimmed rain hat. Most likely because the rain was too heavy, he had not clearly seen someone lying on the road. It was only when he neared Ta Lin, who suddenly sat up, that he realized. Coupled with his extremely fast dash from the rain, this fall was quite heavy. His entire body plummeted into the edge of the man-shaped pit, and he immediately cursed loudly, "Ifck your mother." The wide-brimmed hat flew off, and the basket on his back also overturned, a swathe of stark white rice spilling entirely onto one spot. The man sat on the ground so utterly vexed that he cried out, then slapped his hand down hard, causing the sodden rice and mud to splatter onto Ta Lin's face. He was infuriated beyond measure, leaping 3 feet high, pointing directly at Ta Lin's nose and bellowing, "What the devil is this? Your old man toiled exhaustedly until I almost died just to earn a little money to buy rice, and just like that it's all gone and my lip is bleeding from the fall too. Pay me compensation. Don't you dare feign death, pay me compensation." Ta Lin's eyes held no trace of him at all, nor did he have any intention of paying him mind. The man relentlessly refused to let go, grabbing Ta Lin by the collar with one hand. "I ask you, do you wish to die?" Ta Lin uttered coldly, "Yes." The man hissed, "Then damn it, if you wish to die, roll to one side and die quietly. What are you doing blocking other people's path in the middle of the main road? Even in death you cannot find peace, you immoral wretch." Ta Lin allowed him to frantically shake his collar, his face utterly devoid of emotion, utterly numb. Curse away, curse away. It doesn't matter, just curse as you please. Soon all of it will vanish. The sun is also setting soon. The man, gripping Ta Lin's collar, demanded compensation from him. Seeing no compensation, he cursed him until his head was swimming in dog's blood, yet was still not appeased. He shoved him back and forth for a long while before picking up the conical hat from the ground and putting it on, then grumbling fiercely, he walked onwards. Ta Lin was, with a thud, tossed back into the pit by him. Gradually, the sound of falling rain grew louder than the clamor. That was the sound of thousands upon thousands of lost souls, sealed within the blackness inside the black sword, shrieking. As the twilight sun slowly, bit by bit, sank westward within Ta Lin's mind, they seemed to be in a frenzy, cheering for their impending freedom and revenge. Ta Lin raised one hand, covering his face. As he tremblingly extended his other hand, intending to grasp this sword, suddenly, he noticed something peculiar. The rain seemed to have stopped. No, that's not right. It wasn't that the rain had ceased, but rather something was shielding him from above, helping him block the torrential rain. Ta Lin suddenly opened his eyes and looked up, only to see a person squatting before him, placing the hat from his own head onto Ta Lin's. It was none other than the person who had just cursed him up and down. He glared at the other party, who also glared at him, saying, "Why are you glaring at me? What now? Cursed you a couple of sentences and you want to die already, huh?" Pausing, he spat out a mouthful of saliva, then continued, "Wearing that morning face, don't you think it's unlucky?" Oh, that person who just a moment ago had revealed a fierce face, at this very moment upon reflection, felt a little guilty, muttered a few sentences, then defended himself. All right, just now consider me in the wrong. But I cursed you also because you deserve to be cursed. Who told you to suddenly fall ill like that? And another thing, who hasn't been cursed before? Ta Lin, his eyes wide open, could not utter a word. That person impatiently said, all right, consider me unlucky then, I don't need you to compensate anymore. And what are you still lying here for? So grown up already, what's with being so helpless? Do you want to wait for your parents to come pull you up? Huh? Get up, get up, get up, get up. As he urged, he also pulled and tugged, pulling Ta Lin up from the ground, powerfully slapped his back with both hands, saying, "Stand up, hurry, go home now." Ta Lin was thus pulled up from the person-shaped pit, then was smacked by those two hands until he almost fell back to the ground, stunned and then stunned again. By the time he recovered his senses, that person had long since gone. Only a wide-brimmed conical hat remained on his head, like a warm reminder that just now was not an illusion. He had truly been pulled out by someone. After an unknown amount of time, Bok Vo Tuong again appeared behind him. This time he did not smile, his tone also no longer calm and self-satisfied as before, instead, faintly had a trace of sluggishness and unease, asking, "What are you doing here?" The rain still poured down onto the ground. Ta Lin wore on his head the wide-brimmed conical hat that person had given him. Although he had long since been drenched in return, his face did not have a single drop of rainwater on it. However, his cheeks were still thoroughly wet as before. Seeing that Ta Lin did not reply to him, Bok Vo Tuong again said in a deep voice, "The sun is about to set. Quickly take your sword, otherwise you know what will happen." Ta Lin also did not turn his head. Lightly cursed, "Ifck your mother." Bok Vo Tuong's tone carried a hint of coldness. "What did you just say?" Ta Lin turned towards him, calmly said, "Did you not hear clearly? Then I will repeat it again." Suddenly he flew high up, raised his leg and delivered a thunderous kick to Bok Vo Tuong, sending his entire body flying several zhang backwards. Landing from the kick, Ta Lin used one hand to cover his wound, the other hand pointing towards Bokvo Tuong who had just flown away. Using his loudest voice, cursed with all his might, "I have your mother. Who do you think you are to dare speak to me like that? I am His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, understood?" On his face at this moment, 2 streams of tears had overflowed his eyelashes and streamed down. One person. Just one person. Truly only one person was enough. The author has something to say, so sorry for being late. Let's count down now, at most 2 more chapters and the 4th volume will end. Volume 4 Chapter 197. Bai Wuxiang was kicked flying by him, somersaulted in the air for 2 turns, then steadily landed onto the ground, his mouth shouting loudly, "You are crazy." He was enraged. Until now this was the first time Xie Lian saw his reaction ripple so intensely. This made him very pleased. Extending a hand to grab the black sword stuck in the ground, he replied, "I am not crazy, I am just returning." The kick just now was completely unexpected, giving no time to defend. Now attacking was no longer easy. Bai Wuxiang's figure flickered in and out of sight. He said coldly, Have you forgotten how your parents left, how the common folk treated you, and even the believers turning their backs on you, just for an insignificant passerby? And you immediately forgot all of it." "I have not forgotten." Yet he immediately swung out a sword strike, carrying full rage as he shouted, "What does it have to do with you?" Bai Wuxiang, with a single motion, caught the sword tip. His hand squeezed so tightly that fresh blood continuously flowed down, to the point where his bone joints also let out creaking sounds. He was somewhat losing control, unable to believe what was happening, his mouth muttering, "Useless, useless. You truly are useless. Having reached this point, you can still change your mind, you can still turn back." Xie Lian used force to press the sword down, grinding his teeth as he said, "You make me nauseous, therefore I absolutely will not become a disgusting person like you." "Oh." Bai Wuxiang seemed to slightly regain composure, gradually stabilizing his original tone, and sighed a long drawn-out sigh. "You are also just struggling in death, that's all. Have you forgotten the words I said before?" Xie Lian took a breath. Bai Wuxiang slowly emphasized each word. "The ghost battlefield, summoned by you. Now it is already too late. They cannot hold on any longer." In the pouring rain, the black sword in Xie Lian's hand let out a sharp buzzing sound, piercing painfully into his ears as well as into his head. Bai Wuxiang continued, "What do you intend to do now? Is it worth it? Making these people endure 10,000 generations of curses?" From the moment he kicked him, Xie Lian remained in a state of boiling blood, hot-headed but clear-minded, his words replaced by a swinging sword. He held firm to his original intention, not wanting to mention what should be done afterwards. So when he heard him ask like that, Xie Lian was a bit confused, not knowing how to answer. "You surely don't know what I intend to do. Let me tell you, the first step is to deal with you." Bai Wuxiang snorted coldly, "You don't know your own strength." He had just finished speaking when Xie Lian suddenly felt his body become light as air, his whole being flying high up. He quickly stabilized his mind, searching for his center of gravity, but before he could find it, a stark white figure already flashed above, and a powerful blow struck down. Xie Lian was like an iron ball thrown down by someone. A very loud sound resonated as his whole body slammed deep into the ground. If initially in his heart Xie Lian still harbored a sliver of hope, thinking positively, "If I burst out for a bit, I can surely win," then after this one blow landed, he immediately became completely sober. Cannot win. Too strong. This person for him was completely overwhelming. Xie Lian had never thought that anyone facing him would completely overwhelm him. Only during times facing Jun Wu did this thought accidentally flash through for a moment. Jun Wu's strength was real, not fake, but he also knew to restrain himself to a certain extent. Even when relaxed, he still brought a feeling of power, absolutely unlike Bai Wuxiang. Within this person was ferocity, also carrying a wave of malevolent, murderous intent. Therefore, with just one move, Xie Lian immediately knew he absolutely could not win against Bai Wuxiang. He feared that only Jun Wu would be of the same level to contend with this person. But currently his words could not be conveyed to Jun Wu, because fundamentally there was no way to convey them at all. A sudden kick, a pair of snow-white boots kicked squarely into Xie Lian's chest. He calmly said, "From the very beginning, it was also because you did not know your own strength, dreaming empty dreams, that it led to all these things." Xie Lian was kicked so hard his 5 viscera and 6 bowels ached. His whole body convulsed in pain. He could not suppress spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood, exclaiming, "No, it's not me." "Bai Wuxiang, what did you say?" Ta Lian reached out a hand and clung tightly to his shoe. Though his vision was pitch black, his 2 eyes still blazed brightly. "It was you who brought the human face disease." Was you who brought about all these things? Oh. Bai Wuxiang gave a humph. Perhaps so. If you insist on saying it that way. Immediately he smiled once more, but clearly, if it were not for you overestimating yourself, attempting to defy heaven's will, then I would not have appeared in this mortal realm. I was born in accordance with heaven's mandate. The rage in Ta Lian's eyes was not only not extinguished by the heavy rain, but on the contrary, burned ever more fiercely. He said, stop being so self-righteous. I don't need you to teach me, I will learn on my own. If you represent heaven's will, then this heaven's will should be destroyed. Across the sky thunder rolled and fierce winds howled. Bai Wuxiang's voice gradually grew lower. He said softly, I have painstakingly taught you, yet you are so foolish and unwise. Crown Prince, my patience is wearing thin. Ta Lian coughed a few times. Bai Wuxiang continued, however, it also makes no difference, on the contrary, you have already awakened them, and only the final step remains. And this final step, let me help you with it. Ta Lian asked cautiously, what do you intend to do? Bai Wuxiang bent down, grasped Ta Lian's hand, powerfully thrust the black sword into his grasp, gripped it firmly and raised the sword to the sky. A silver-gray bolt of lightning struck down from the sky, traveled to the tip of the sword, then reversed its course. Dense black clouds began to churn, and the entire sky of Yong'an appeared as a sea of ink. Wide black clouds with countless faces, hands and complete human forms seething, as if leaving hell to ascend to heaven. At the same time the sun also set. Ta Lian lay on the ground, his eyes reflecting the image of rolling black clouds and crashing thunder and flashing lightning. Bai Wuxiang shoved him aside, and simultaneously, the black sword also fell with a clang. From the sea of clouds came screams and roars, like a myriad of soldiers and horses. This battle could be said to shake heaven and earth. In the main streets and narrow alleys, many people frightened rushed out, umbrellas in hand, faces bewildered, hurriedly asking one another, what's wrong? What's making all that noise? Oh my heavens! Look at the sky. Are those human faces? Great chaos in the world, an omen of great chaos in the world. Ta Lian, his face covered in mud, staggered to his feet from the ground, and bellowed, go back. Hurry home. Don't come out. Hurry back. Run fast. The human face disease erupted once again. Ta Lian stood there, desperately waving his hands. Bai Wuxiang, standing nearby, softly smiled. Ta Lian suddenly turned his head and glared at him with wide eyes. Bai Wuxiang, with both hands tucked into his sleeves, said with an air of calm composure, why such anger? After all, there's no turning back for you. You might as well properly savor this sweet revenge. Just enjoy it to your heart's content. This is your masterpiece. Oh, Ta Lian said, do you think I have no other way? Bai Wuxiang replied, if you still have a method, then by all means proceed. Ta Lian took a deep breath, snatched up the black sword from the ground with one hand, and walked towards the crowd at the roadside ahead. Everyone recognized this was the former crown prince who had lain on the roadside for 2 days, looking like neither ghost, god, nor man, and they hurriedly and cautiously backed away. Ta Lian cried out, everyone, halt! For some unknown reason, although the person before them was covered in mud from head to toe, a peculiar presence emanated from him, and everyone indeed halted. Ta Lian asked them, do you see that thing in the sky? Everyone nodded. Ta Lian explained, those things are resentful spirits that stirred up the human face disease, and very soon this contagion will erupt a second time. That sea of black clouds was truly frightening, so without needing many words, everyone frantically believed, bewildered and in a panic, human faces the human face disease. How has it come again? Could it truly be? Some people were bewildered and fearful, some turned and ran, but the vast majority still stood uneasily rooted to the spot, waiting for him to say something more. Ta Lian did not speak again. He simply raised the sword and took one step forward. Seeing him holding the gleaming weapon, everyone instantly recoiled several feet in fright. Ta Lian shouted, hold! Everyone, terrified, said, what are you doing? Amidst the curtain of rain, Xie Lian raised his sword and said in a deep voice, I want you all to use this sword to stab me, then you will not be infected by the human face plague. Bai Wuxiang's smile was interrupted for a moment. A moment later, he still calmly spoke, Crown Prince, have you gone mad? Everyone also looked bewildered. What is this? What are you saying? Has he gone mad? Take a sword and stab him? Is he serious? What does he want to do? The crowd completely scattered. Bai Wuxiang burst into a loud fit of laughter. Have you lost your mind? Or have you not tasted enough of 100 swords piercing your heart? No, that's not right. This time I'm afraid you want to taste once more 10,000 swords piercing your heart. Open your eyes wide and look carefully at the sky. He suddenly stopped laughing. His hand pointed to the sky. Vengeful spirits have already enveloped all of Yong'an. In other words, if you want to save all living beings, Then of course you must let each person from all of Yong'an come and stab you once with a sword, and within one day you will immediately turn into a pile of minced meat. How is this kind of foolish method different from when you defied heaven to pray for rain? Do you think you can save them? Xie Lian turned his back to him, and replied, if 1 day is not enough, then 1 month. If 1 month is not enough, then 2 months, 3 months. If 10,000 people cannot be saved, then save 1,000 people. If 1,000 people cannot be saved, then save 100, then 10 people. Even if it's only 1. Bai Wuxiang furiously cried out, why are you like this? Xie Lian raised his sword with both hands, and roared loudly, no reason at all. Because I want to. Consider this me telling you. He slightly turned his head back and said disdainfully, you, that kind of good-for-nothing, will never understand. The language of his gaze contained scorn and contempt that was too obvious, and also too deeply etched. Bai Wuxiang seemed no longer able to control himself. His tone slightly rose. You, what did you call me? Xie Lian no longer paid attention to him, calmly turned towards the crowd, and said, 1 stab is fine, I will not die. You have all seen that these past 2 days. However, each person can only do it once, furthermore no recklessness is allowed. All of you must listen to me. Whoever dares to disobey my order, I will smash that person's head to pieces. Believe one thing, this one hand of mine can smash 100 of you into pieces. Bai Wuxiang was incredulous. You dare to give yourself to a bunch of good-for-nothings to bring about ruin and destruction, and yet you call me a good-for-nothing? How could anyone dare to accept the sword in Xie Lian's hand? They dared not accept it but also dared not run. Bai Wuxiang, ignored by him, grew even more furious and said icily, fine. Then I shall see with my own eyes what kind of stubbornly persistent person like you transforms yourself into. But regardless of the outcome, it is all your own doing, and do not in the end break down and cry saying you regret it and then come looking for me. After a moment of pushing and shoving, the dark clouds in the sky grew ever darker. As though they were on the verge of falling, countless screams still echoed in their ears. Finally there was a father, so terrified he couldn't bear it anymore, who pulled a child forward to receive the sword, and said, I will first let my wife and child try it a little. The others were still hesitating. Seeing this, they cried out in shock, you really mean to try it? This father was actually also hesitating. He closed his eyes. Hey, he really want die, right? Sorry, great brother, truly sorry. My little bow. With that said, he used his hand to cover the eyes of the child in his arms, letting it grasp the black sword. Bai Wuxiang also did not intervene, only stood to the side, smiling sinisterly. Xie Lian slightly clenched his fists, waiting for the pain to arrive, and told himself in his heart, it's nothing. It has already hurt so much, very soon I will get used to it. Unexpectedly, just as the black sword was about to stab into his stomach, suddenly with a clang, it was knocked away by someone. Xie Lian had not yet felt the pang of pain arrive, but clearly heard a voice, no. He tilted his head and looked over. The person who had just dropped this black sword was, surprisingly, a water seller. This water seller blended in among the crowd, as if unable to bear the sight, stepped forward and said, listen to me, this really isn't good. Look at his stomach. If the blood spills out, will he still be able to survive? Even if he doesn't die, he will still bleed, won't he? This father, with a sorrowful brow and a pained expression, stammered, this matter. This matter. The water seller's wife from within the crowd stealthily tugged at his sleeve. Seeing this, the water seller turned his head and softly snapped, don't pull. Whatever it is, we'll talk about it when we get back. After that, he turned back and continued speaking, moreover, we don't even know if stabbing him will prevent the illness or not, so shouldn't we avoid stabbing him blindly and haphazardly? The father, pointing to the sky, said, but immediately. At this moment, the child in his arms burst into tears. The water seller immediately pointed at it and said, look, hearing you talk about taking the sword to stab someone. Your son is so scared he's crying. Sure enough, the child, wailing and crying, threw the black sword from his hand onto the ground, most likely not understanding what his father wanted to do, only feeling fear. At this point, the father's resolve was immediately shattered. He hugged his son and turned back into the crowd. There were a few people who had long been eager to try, but seeing the first person encounter difficulty, the others naturally felt it awkward to speak up, so they shouted from within the crowd, didn't you hear what he said? The man-faced disease is about to return. He is god of plagues. Everything on his head was brought by him. The water seller retorted, if he were the god of plagues, he would never willingly do such a thing, right? As he was speaking, a few people, feeling provoked, couldn't hold back. You also know that he is willing, so what's the problem? Or do you want everyone to die? You just sell your water, that's enough. Normally you're shortchanging people by 1 or 2 caddies. What are you trying to show off at a time like this? The water seller's wife, who had just been stealthily pulling at him, hearing such a remark, immediately exploded. Her face flushed crimson as she cursed shortchanging my foot. Who shortchanges people by 1 or 2 caddies? Roll out here and say that again. The other party immediately recoiled. This water seller's face also flushed crimson, and he immediately spoke up boldly. Listen to me. Whether he is willing or not is his business, whether we do it or not is our business. Such a thing as taking a knife to stab someone, it's not something you just say and do. If I had given him a bowl of water these past 2 days, then I could go and grasp that sword, but I haven't given him any. Who has? This sword. I, on the contrary, cannot bring myself to hold it. Book 4 Chapter 198 End of Book 4. Hearing him say that, everyone fell into a state of silence. Because he had struck the nail on the head these past 2 days, truly not a single person had come to help Xie Lian. That water seller, for better or worse, had intended to offer water, it just hadn't come to fruition. As for the others, they basically didn't even want to look in his direction. Very soon, someone shouted out, so what must be done in the end? If we don't stab him, then you suggest a solution. Seeing that the crowd was about to fall into chaos again, and some people were desperately pushing to the front at this moment, a loud voice suddenly roared, who's causing trouble here? If anyone still dares to babble and make noise, this old man will grant you a stab. Upon looking, it turned out to be the chubby chef from that day. Xie Lian even thought he wanted to come and pull out the sword. Who would have thought? He seemed angered, and aggressively stepped forward. This old brother speaks very truly. Yesterday, if it weren't for these people constantly blocking me, and not letting me go forward, I almost managed to pull out the sword here. I myself am not moving now, so why are these people who blocked me on the contrary shouting the loudest? Pa, are you even worthy? Such shameless impudence I've never seen before. This chef had a bulky build, his voice was booming, and when angered he even grabbed a cleaver, as if he had just come out of the kitchen. The loudest people from before immediately dared not utter a single sound. There were a few people who knew nothing about what had happened these past 2 days. After finding someone to inquire clearly, their hearts immediately cried out in shock. No way? No. A single one of you went over? That's right, you just left him lying there for 2 days? Not even one person helped him up? Provoked in such a way, some people could no longer stand it, and retorted, don't pretend to be good people anymore. If you were there at that time, would you necessarily have dared to go up and help? You're all just being wise after the event. Don't forget, once those monstrous entities fall, not a single strand of your hair will escape. Ha, let me tell you, if I were there at that time, I would certainly have gone up to pull out the sword for him. The matter has already happened, it's easy to talk about now. Hold on. What on earth are you arguing about? The current problem is not whether to pull out the sword or not. Squabbling endlessly, the 2 groups of people began to clamor noisily, and the rain had also gradually lessened. But the black clouds overhead gathered more and more densely, pressing down on over 100 people below, making it impossible to breathe. Suddenly, fearful cries erupted from within the crowd. With several fingers pointing to the sky, they've arrived. Xie Lian also raised his head in response. Afterwards, he saw human faces tumbling within the black clouds suddenly become agitated, pulling into a very long tail, looking like a black shooting star rapidly falling. The human face disease had arrived. Everyone was panicked and flustered. Some quickly ran to escape, others hid inside rooms, and a few also went to pick up the black sword. But they all failed to grasp it, for the sword that had just been dropped had vanished without a trace. No one knew when. Xie Lian, who had just been startled by the commotion, only now realized this, and quickly asked, where's the sword? Who took it? No one was free to answer, as everyone was running like mad in all directions. But how could they be as fast as the falling resentful spirits? Very quickly, from all directions successively came the desperate cries of the dead and the howling of resentful spirits. Those resentful spirits, upon catching up with the living, immediately transformed into a billowing plume of dense, pitch-black smoke, clinging ceaselessly, leaving no gap, slowly merging into their bodies. Xie Lian tried his best to drive them away, but ultimately, there were too many resentful spirits. He alone simply couldn't drive them all away. He watched countless people before him being chased until they cried out desperately. The couple who sold drinks and the fat chef were also enveloped by the black smoke, tumbling all over the ground, while Bai Wuxiang, not far from there, was cackling ceaselessly, merely standing by with his arms crossed. Xie Lian was both angry and anxious, resolved to risk his life, and swiftly turned towards the densest concentration of resentful spirits, shouting, hey! He, after all, was the one who instigated their awakening, and calling out so loudly, those things naturally immediately paid attention to him. Xie Lian spread his arms towards them, calling, come to me quickly. The resentful spirits currently clinging to the living hesitated, deliberating whether to come or not, while other resentful spirits in the air immediately changed direction, clinging to each other as they struck towards Xie Lian. It was a success. Xie Lian's heartbeat suddenly stopped. He had no idea what would happen, nor did he know what he himself would become. He only relied on the surge of fervent spirit in his mind, feeling one truth, that because that despicable wretch was still here, even if he were beaten until his face swelled, he absolutely could not retreat. Even if there were hundreds, thousands of vengeful spirits, he would triumph wherever he fought, unstoppable. Do you want to see me grieve myself, resent myself, hate myself? Absolutely not. Never will I. Black waves filling the sky and earth surrounded Xie Lian. A crying, resentful spirit pierced through his body, and in an instant, Xie Lian's heart felt as if it had been frozen into a block, his entire body trembling. Immediately afterwards successively came the second, the third. These things, like sword edges and blade auras, suddenly pierced through Xie Lian's body, each time taking away several degrees of his body temperature. Xie Lian's complexion grew paler and grayer, but he consistently persevered without retreating. At this moment there were only a few hundred, so he could persevere for a while. Next, more and more would come. Those black clouds filling the sky, all of them were resentful spirits. Xie Lian tightly closed his eyes, having long since prepared to use his own strength to bear all the wrath of the resentful spirits. To his surprise, next they lingered, refusing to come. Under his bewilderment, he opened his eyes, and suddenly discovered that the black waves filling the sky and earth surrounding him had all disappeared, because they had all transformed into a billowing plume of smoke, sucked away in another direction. In astonishment, Xie Lian turned his head to look. He only saw at the end of the road a black-clad warrior standing there, and in his hand, he was holding a long black sword. Wu Ming. Xie Lian had reminded him beforehand to let him go out by himself, only needing to wait for him to trigger the human face disease. So why did he appear here at this exact moment? Xie Lian himself wasn't clear about the current situation, and even less did he know what the black-clad warrior was doing here. Stunned for a moment, he immediately ran towards him, running and shouting, "Wait a moment. What are you doing here? Don't touch things recklessly. Give me back the sword." Wu Ming seemed to hear his call and softly raised his head. Xie Lian couldn't see his true face, only seeing the smiling mask. Nevertheless, in his heart, a strange feeling emerged. He felt that beneath Wu Ming's mask, he truly seemed to be smiling. However, this feeling only flashed by. The Jia, NT black vortex and the roaring screams mixed into a storm, all converging towards the other side, in an instant swallowing Hei Wu Jia whole. At that moment, Xie Lian heard a wail of agony like a shattered heart. He seemed to have heard this sound somewhere before. He had definitely heard it somewhere. Pain. Pain to the marrow, pain worse than death, pain that paralyzed his whole body, pain that made his knees buckle to the ground, his hands clutching his head, wailing tragically, "Ah, ah." The pain erupting in his heart came suddenly, and left just as suddenly without knowing how much time had passed. The surroundings gradually returned to quiet. Xie Lian dazedly lowered his hands that had been clutching his head. Slightly dazed, he raised his head and swept his gaze around in all directions. People were lying scattered haphazardly. The vast majority were unconscious. The vengeful spirits that had been clinging to them earlier had truly disappeared. This sight made him endlessly bewildered. What happened to the human face plague? What happened to those vengeful spirits? What was wrong with him too? The black chi had long since vanished into thin air. And where Wu Ming had just stood, only a black sword remained. Lying on the ground beside the sword tip, a small flower lay abandoned. Xie Lian staggered up, walked forward and picked up the flower and the sword. He touched his face, looked at his arm, and did not feel any deformity anywhere, not L. Ike had just suffered a powerful curse. Just as he was in a daze, suddenly from behind him a soft voice spoke. "Oh." Xie Lian turned around, seeing Bai Wuxiang with his hands swaying his sleeves, standing behind him, his wide voluminous sleeves fluttering in the wind. Xie Lian had not yet figured out what exactly was happening, but vaguely in his heart he had a bit of an ominous feeling. Bai Wuxiang glanced at him and softly smiled, making the ominous feeling become even more intense. Xie Lian frowned and asked, "What are you laughing at?" Bai Wuxiang retorted, "You still don't know what happened?" Xie Lian, "What?" Bai Wuxiang replied, "Do you know who that ghost is?" "Oh." Xie Lian said, "Spirit battle, battlefield?" Bai Wuxiang said, "That's right. But along with that, in this world, he is your only believer. Now he is no more." "Oh. Believer? In this world he still has a believer?" A long time later, Xie Lian was finally able to utter a few words. He said with difficulty, "What is called no more?" Bai Wuxiang distantly replied, "Soul scattered and spirit dispersed." Xie Lian was somewhat unable to accept how could his soul be scattered and spirit dispersed. Bai Wuxiang said because he took your place in enduring the curse the vengeful spirits you summoned had devoured him until not a single trace remained. Oh, the vengeful spirits summoned by him? Took his place enduring the curse. Bai Wuxiang added, that's right, this isn't the first time you've seen him. Xie Lian stared blankly at him. Bai Wuxiang reminded with great interest this ghost seemed to have been following you all along. Before, I merely thought it held deep resentment so I captured it and questioned it for a while. Who would have known the outcome was incredibly interesting. Ghost Festival, the night of the Lantern Parade, Ghost Fire Spirit. Do you still remember? Xie Lian murmured. Ghost Festival? The night of the Lantern Parade? Ghost Fire Spirit? Bai Wuxiang recounted leisurely and unhurriedly this ghost, when he was alive, was a soldier under your command. After dying, he became a vengeful spirit following you. He died in battle for you, endured 100 swords piercing his heart for you and transformed into a fierce ghost, and then again because you instigated the human face disease, his soul vanished and spirit dispersed. Xie Lian vaguely recalled a little bit, but he had never seen the face of this devotee, nor did he even know his name. If he truly tried to remember, how much could he possibly recall? Perhaps there really still were devotees worshipping him. That's right, there were. Furthermore, he was even the only devotee. Bai Wuxiang spoke of many other things, making Xie Lian listen in a daze, but they failed to truly register in his ears, until at the very end he finally said, a god like you is already pathetic and ridiculous enough. To be your devotee must be pathetic and ridiculous to the extreme. Oh, earlier when Xie Lian had no reaction whatsoever, but upon hearing this person mock his devotee, Xie Lian was as if awakened by a sword thrust, unable to suppress his fury. He charged forward but was captured by a single move. Bai Wuxiang said coldly, you cannot defeat me. How many more times must I tell you before you realize it? Xie Lian fundamentally did not want to defeat him, or rather losing was merely a trivial matter. He only wanted to violently assault this person. Therefore, he angrily said, what do you know? On what grounds do you mock him? That was his only devotee in this world. Bai Wuxiang spoke again, a devotee following a failure. What grounds do I have not to mock? You are foolish, your devotee is even more foolish. Listen here. If you wish to defeat me, you must obey my teachings. Otherwise you will never hope to win. Xie Lian truly wanted to let out a furious scoff at him with all his might, but even breathing was difficult. Bai Wuxiang took something out with his hand. In his palm appeared a mask of joy and sorrow. He held it out and said, now let's start over. He was about to press this mask onto Xie Lian's face, yet unexpectedly at this very moment, rumble rumble. In the sky, thunder boomed and lightning flashed, and within the cloud layers, strange rays of light shot forth. Bai Wuxiang vigilantly stopped his movement, saying, what is this? Heavenly tribulation? After a pause he rejected the idea. No, that's not right. Not right. As heavenly tribulation, but not just heavenly tribulation. A heavy male voice echoed, he cannot defeat you. What about me? Xie Lian suddenly raised his head. Unbeknownst since when, at the end of the road ahead suddenly appeared a person wearing white armor, a young martial god burning with auspicious aura, whose entire body was enveloped in a layer of slightly white spiritual light, hand resting on sword, treading step by step forth, from within the gloomy dark night, carving out a bright path. He couldn't help but widen his eyes. Junwu. Oh. After the rain the sky brightened again. Xie Lian sat on the ruined, scorched earth. Junwu sheathed his sword, walked over and said, Xianlu, welcome back to your original position. His expression was weary, on his face still bore bloodstains, those were left by Bai Wuxiang. In addition, on Junwu's body also bore dozens of wounds, big and small. It could not be said they were not severe, it was just that Bai Wuxiang was even more severe, continuously beaten until his spirit dissipated and form scattered. Only remaining on the ground was a shattered mask of joy and sorrow. Hearing him say, return to your original position, Xie Lian was stunned, touched his neck, only then realizing, the cursed shackle had already disappeared. Junwu smiled, saying, I truly did not misjudge. The time it took for you to return was even shorter than I imagined. Xie Lian gradually recovered his composure, also smiled for a moment, but it was a bitter smile. After calming his breath he said, Emperor, I wish to ask you for one thing. Junwu replied, you may. Xie Lian said, you won't even ask what matter it is? Junwu said, on the contrary, when you return to Xianjing, you will also have to present a gift. Let this count as a gift for returning to your original position then. Xie Lian twitched the corner of his mouth slightly, stood up, looked directly at Junwu and solemnly said, in that case, I beg you to, a second time, demote me to the mortal realm. Hearing this, Junwu reined in his smile, asked why? Xie Lian frankly said I did something wrong. The second human face disease was I who instigated. Although the consequences appear not too severe. Because it was only the disappearance of a nameless ghost soul. And in this world probably basically no one would pay attention to a nameless ghost soul at all for that reason, it seems the consequences are not necessarily severe. Junwu slowly said to know what is wrong in that case you are already right. Xie Lian shook his head, saying just knowing is not enough. Doing something wrong must lead to punishment but I erred the one who bore the punishment in my stead was. He raised his head saying for that reason, I must bear punishment, I implore the emperor, to bestow upon me one cursed shackle, no 2 shackles. One shackle to seal away my spiritual power. One shackle to scatter all my destiny. Junwu slightly furrowed his brow scattering all dest. Any? Then wouldn't you be plagued by extreme bad luck? Truly becoming a plague god? Previously Xie Lian was indeed very mindful of being called a plague god. Certainly he would resist immensely because he felt he was suffering extreme humiliation. But now for him it no longer held any meaning a plague god than be a plague god. I know myself not to be one, and that is enough. After he scattered his own path of good fortune, the misfortunes would naturally gravitate to the excessively unfortunate places on his body, and that would serve as compensation. Junwu reminded it will be very humiliating. Xie Lian said if I lose face then I lose face. To be honest the feeling. It seems I'll get used to it quickly. Although he also didn't want to get used to such things but, this habit truly made him impervious to all poisons. Junwu looked at him Xianlu. You must understand that without spiritual power, you will not be a god. Xie Lian sighed Emperor, I understand it better than anyone. He paused for a moment he spoke with a little sorrow, and also a little disappointment everyone says I am a god because I have spiritual power. But in reality, They don't necessarily consider me a god for that reason, nor am I necessarily invincible as they wish me to be. Isn't such a god very much a failure? Wanting to protect my people, but instead causing their corpses to pile up in the fields wanting revenge. But at the crucial moment I withdrew my hand, all for naught. These 2 Ord's failure by Wu Xiang truly spoke no falsehood. He paused for a moment then said again if I'm not then I'm not. Junwu carefully gazed at him, and after a long while, he finally spoke Xianlu has grown up. These words should have come from the mouths of Xie Lian's elders. Regrettably, his imperial father and mother no longer had the chance to utter these words. A moment later, Junwu continued if you have already chosen your own path, then that is good. However, for me to demote you to the mortal realm, there must be a reason. One could not so casually or frivolously dismiss a heavenly official, otherwise what was the point of ascending? For this Xie Lian already had a clear idea he said Emperor, it seems we haven't truly competed with our full strength even once? Junwu immediately understood his meaning, and smilingly said Xianlu, but I have injuries on my body. Xie Lian said I too bear injuries so we are perfectly matched. Junwu nodded if that is so, I certainly will not hold back. Xie Lian gently smiled. A light of eager challenge flickered in his eyes nor will I. Oh! His Royal Highness the Crown Prince was once again demoted. After the grand and spectacular second heavenly tribulation, Crown Prince Xie Lian suddenly surged with a formidable aura, punching and kicking his way up to the heavenly court, ascending for less than the time it takes an incense stick to burn, only to be struck down by the Shan Wu Great Emperor. All the heavenly officials utterly failed to understand what exactly this person he wished to do. However, Xie Lian also utterly failed to understand what the other heavenly officials wanted to do. Were they truly so idle? Every day they would gaze at the sky, feigning to be mortals, then when bored transforming into animals, and even secretly watching him for several days. Was a grown man covered in mud truly so pleasing to the eye? Feeling annoyed to death, suddenly the foreman from behind called out, "Newcomer, yes, you am talking to you. Work diligently, do not be lazy." Xie Lian quickly sat down, replying with a resounding yes. Having answered, he immediately took the tattered straw fan and frantically fanned. Before him, several bricks and stones formed a high stove, and upon it was a large pot of rice, boiling with a gurgling sound. This place was a construction site for transporting mud. However, the bricks had already been moved, and not far from there 2 brand new divine temples had been inaugurated. Currently his task was to cook rice. As he cooked, exerting all his strength, 2 horse-drawn carriages arrived, pulling 2 tall, grand divine statues. Xie Lian, losing focus, flung the fan into the pot, abandoning 100 tasks and 1,000 duties to glance eagerly. The 2 divine statues were respectfully led into 2 different divine temples. The temple on the left cheered and shouted, "Xianzhen General is the greatest. Xianzhen General is benevolent, and kind-hearted." Xie Lian was speechless. To use the phrase benevolent and kind-hearted to praise Mu Qing, were these devotees truly sincere? However, they seemed to have a complete reason. After all, everyone knew that Mu Qing's ascension was also because he had thoroughly cleared away the foolish vengeful spirit remnants in the old Xianlu imperial capital. Interpreting this as benevolent and kind-hearted was not unreasonable. On the contrary, all the people of the old imperial capital were still extremely grateful to him. The temple on the right, unwilling to be outdone, also cheered Zhuyang General is the best. Zhuyang General is divinely brave and invincible. Xie Lian nodded. On that point he truly had nothing to disagree with. However, when it came to facing women, that was less certain. The devotees on both sides roared with all their might, each wanting to drown out the other's shouts, roaring until Xie Lian's ears ached. He sighed, rubbing his temples, and thought to himself, why must it be this way? As if they hated each other, not wanting the other's temple built directly opposite? The answer was of course not. Because this was the most prosperous and feng shui-blessed part of the city. The devotees of these two divine officials naturally wouldn't willingly abandon such a fertile location just to separate. Of course, they would want to snatch the other's incense offerings and vigorously despise each other. A short while later, both groups of devotees finished arguing and immediately charged forward to fight. On his side, Xie Lian felt the cooking fire was nearly sufficient. He tapped the pot lid with the rice scoop and called out in a loud voice, everyone, no more fighting. Come eat. Lost in their battle frenzy, who would pay him any heed? Xie Lian shook his head, opened the pot lid, and a scent drifted 10 li away. This time it was effective. Everyone instantly stopped fighting, shouting frantically, what the hell? What is this smell? Who's cooking dung? And it's the smell of burnt rice with a hint of dung. Xie Lian explained, what do you mean? This is a secretly hidden royal delicacy. The foreman, covering his nose, walked over to take a look, his face turning ashen. He jumped up and cursed, secretly hidden royal delicacy, my foot. You there? Get out, get out, get out quickly. What a truly hateful fellow. Xie Lian conceded, all right, leaving is fine. But please trouble yourself to pay me my wages first. The foreman said, furious, you still dare to demand wages? Tell me, since you arrived, how much loss have I suffered? Thunderbolts never strike anywhere else, but the moment I see you, my house caught fire 3 times, and collapsed 3 times. You are truly a plague god, and you still dare to come asking me for wages. Get out quickly. If you dare to come even once more, I'll beat you once more. Xie Lian said, you can't say it like that, you claim everything is directed at me, so what about others? I see. You merely wish to renege on my payment, no? Before his words had even finished, the foreman and his group of henchmen, unable to bear the wafting aroma any longer, scattered like wind sweeping away clouds, leaving not a trace. Xie Lian called out, wait a moment. Turning his head to look, the 2 gangs who had been fighting earlier had also long since been driven away. Xie Lian was left with nothing to say and muttered to himself to not eat. Yet call me to cook such a large pot. Can one truly waste money so casually? Shaking his head, he pondered for a moment, then dished out 2 large bowls of rice. Placing 1 bowl into each divine temple, he finally felt the rice had found a purpose. He clasped his hands before his chest and clapped once, a look of satisfaction gracing his features. Stepping out to gather his belongings, he meticulously rolled up the sedge mat on the ground, and slung his sword over his shoulder. The white silk wrapped around his wrist, he quietly stroked it gently twice. Xie Lian patted it, then placed the wide-brimmed conical hat onto his head, and said, all right, if there's no remuneration, then there's no remuneration. I'll go perform acrobatics. No matter what, he still possessed a skill to earn a living smashing rocks on his chest. After walking for a while, Xie Lian suddenly noticed a tiny red flower by the roadside, exceptionally lovely. He immediately squatted down, gently caressing its petals. His spirits lifted considerably, and he murmured, I hope we meet again someday. After he had walked far away, the tiny red flower swayed gently in the breeze. End of Book 4. The Book 5 Chapter 199 Book 5. Book 5 Tiongguan Si Fu. Chapter 199 Bearing Heaven and Treading Earth, God Breaks Tong Lu. Xie Lian lay on the cold ground, his face covered by that half-crying, half-smiling mask. Bai Wuxiang stood to one side, seemingly relishing in his appearance, which was now no different from his own. That mask of sorrow and joy clung to Xie Lian's face with a strange demonic power, and no matter how he tried, he could not pull it off. Bai Wuxiang said, wear it. Don't waste your energy refusing. Do you wish to go out? As long as you do as I say, you can quickly break through Tong Lu. Xie Lian merely treated him as if he didn't exist. Bai Wuxiang always made him feel uncomfortable, yet never gave up, sighing, we could have been the strongest master and disciple, and the best of friends. Why must you betray me like this? Xie Lian finally ceased his movements and said with distaste, don't use that world-weary tone, seeing through human hearts, to lecture me. I have truly never once considered having a teacher or a friend of your kind. His loathing was expressed clearly and unequivocally. Bai Wuxiang laughed coldly and said, I know in your heart those who can teach you are one who is the national preceptor, and one who is Junwu, aren't they? His tone was strange, as if he was laughing harmoniously yet with a hint of disdain. Xie Lian had no intention of getting entangled with him, and asked a different question. Lang Huang, is that the first crown prince of Yong'an? Lang Huang was a person of Yong'an who had contracted the human face disease. That young crown prince was the only one Xie Lian could think of. Bai Wuxiang said, that's right, he is the very crown prince whose body you subjected to 1,000 cuts and 10,000 pieces, then knocked unconscious within Yong'an's imperial palace, and finally offered him a blaze. It was widely rumored in Yong'an that the Yong'an king and the crown prince had passed away from severe illness. Internally, however, struggles and chaos ensued, with no one knowing what to do. So, a grandson of Lang Ying was established as the crown prince. This was the ancestor of Lang Tianqiu. Xie Lian said, how did you manage to deceive him? Bai Wuxiang said, I did not deceive him. I merely told him the true situation, revealing who the mastermind was that turned him into such a monster. All he needed to do was lend me a few things, and I would exact revenge for him. Xie Lian said, you call this lending a few things? You completely transformed him into nutrients and devoured him whole. Bai Wuxiang nonchalantly said, in his current state, neither human nor ghost, no one would treat him sincerely. Remaining in this world, he would only suffer torment. Suddenly Xie Lian said, Crown Prince, Your Highness? In that instant Xie Lian sensed that his entity intended to reply. However, it held back. Therefore Xie Lian then cautiously probed with a question, are you in fact the Wu Yong Crown Prince? The moment the words left his lips, he instantly felt the oppressive air of Mount Tonglu freeze solid. From the moment Xie Lian had fallen here, he had always pondered this question. The reason he could comprehend human speech from the mouths of the corpse-eating mice was certainly because one of three individuals, Jun Wu, the imperial advisor, and Bai Wu Xiang had transmitted a segment of memory and certain emotions to him. In other words, one of these three was a person of Wu Yong. As Jun Wu had appeared later than the time Wu Yong was destroyed, the imperial advisor and Bai Wuxiang bore the greatest suspicion. Why was Hua Cheng rejected by Mount Tonglu, forced to remain outside? It wasn't because he was a supreme, for Xie Lian had once confirmed with Hua Cheng that a ghost king who had become a supreme could also enter Mount Tonglu a second time, just as an ascended divine official could continue to experience heavenly tribulations. Yet Hua Cheng had vanished midway. Xie Lian could only conceive of the most direct reason that Mount Tonglu itself obeyed the commands of Bai Wuxiang. In that case, what identity was Bai Wuxiang most likely to bear? A moment later, amidst the profound silence of the darkness, Xie Lian affirmed and repeated once more, you are none other than the crown prince of Wu Yong. Finally, Bai Wu Xiang was no longer tranquil. He fiercely seized Xie Lian, his palm striking incomparably sharp. This time it was Xie Lian's turn to dodge. He leaped up, dodging as he spoke, Your Royal Highness, I have a question for you. Why do you not use your true face to meet people? Bai Wuxiang spoke in a deep voice, Your Royal Highness, I warn you not to call me that. Xie Lian said, you may call yourself Your Royal Highness, so why can I not call you that? If you don't answer, I will simply make my own conjectures. There are simply only two reasons why you would not wish others to see your true face. Either you are someone I know, perhaps I wouldn't recognize you at first glance, but once I see your true face it would be easy to uncover your identity, or your true appearance is utterly repulsive, so hideous that even you cannot bear it. Such as snap crunch went two sounds, and a wave of searing pain shot up his arm. Bai Wuxiang furiously twisted Xie Lian's arm, saying, Oh Crown Prince, merely because I showed a sliver of familiarity with you, you immediately felt no need to harbor any fear towards me? This voice carried an icy chill all around. Yet amidst the agony Xie Lian remained as clear-headed as ever. Bai Wuxiang seemed utterly enraged. He lifted a black sword with one hand, approaching Xie Lian and said, You named this sword Fang Xian? Staring blankly as the tip of the dark, silent sword drew ever closer to his throat, Xie Lian's expression remained unchanged. As he said, Is it not permitted? Bai Wuxiang snorted, You fundamentally had no need to name it. Listen carefully, this sword already had a name, called Slaying Heart. Suddenly Xie Lian's eyes widened. Who is it? He exclaimed. Bai Wuxiang did not turn his head back. Do you still wish to employ such childish tricks to deal with me? He asked. Xie Lian was utterly astonished. You didn't notice? He whispered. Bai Wuxiang said coldly, there is nothing. What do you wish me to discover? He had not noticed, yet Xie Lian had. Just now, the tip of Fang Xin's sword had reflected the firelight from the ground, and that same firelight between the two men had suddenly flashed upon the stone wall above. In that fleeting instant, Xie Lian had seen a face. Xie Lian dared to guarantee he was absolutely not mistaken. He had unequivocally seen a face emerge, a truly colossal face. Bai Wuxiang's cultivation could only be higher than Xie Lian's, not lower. How could he possibly not have noticed? Unless this was something even more terrifying than Bai Wuxiang himself. He had seen that face for only a brief moment, yet the image remained seared into his memory. That face had complete features, and at the same time, it was somewhat familiar. Xie Lian felt goosebumps rise all over him. There's something else inside Mount Tonglu, he declared. Bok Vo Tuong again said, inside Tonglu, besides you and me, there is only rock and molten lava. Xie Lian was about to say more, but said no. I thought to himself, wait a bit. Rock? A face? Looked familiar? A flash of inspiration suddenly shone, and he suddenly understood, realizing what he had seen. So that's how it was. Once he understood clearly, Xie Lian's two hands behind his back quickly formed hand seals. Bok Vo Tuong discovered his unusual movement and said, useless, you anyway will. Who knew? Before his words were finished, a cracking explosion came from behind the two people. At the same time, rock and earth fell down like torrential rain. Bok Vo Tuong felt something flying towards him, and quickly dodged away. He dodged truly very quickly. No one could have movements faster than him. He originally could have perfectly avoided it, only regrettably, the thing attacking towards him was too colossal. That was a colossal hand, 5 fingers gathered into a fist, heavily striking down, accurately hitting Bok Vo Tuong. That hand was precisely a colossal hand made from rock. It was truly too large. Just one fist could already be compared to a large house. The firelight on the ground could only illuminate a part. The other parts from the wrist upwards were entirely submerged in darkness. Amidst the cracking sound of falling earth and rock, it turned its hand towards Xie Lian's side, its palm facing upwards. Although massive, its fingers were slender, its knuckles delicate. It could pick flowers and also could lift a sword. Xie Lian snatched Fang Xian, crawled up from the ground and jumped onto the paw. That hand was just about to lift him up, when Xie Lian suddenly remembered he had forgotten an item, and hastily said, wait a moment. Then jumped down to grab his bamboo hat, and jumped back up. After that, the colossal hand flew upwards, getting farther and farther from the firelight below. Xie Lian also felt he was ascending higher and higher. His two hands a second time formed hand seals, and said, break out. Upon giving the command, he felt a slight sinking sensation below, as if this giant lifting him was slightly bending its two knees, preparing its stance. The next moment, he again felt his whole body powerfully sink. That giant shot upwards, flying towards the sealed volcano mouth of Tonglu. Boom! 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 Accompanied by intense vibrations, Xie Lian also clearly heard the extremely clear cracking sound. That was rock unable to withstand this fierce blow. The sound as if about to be crushed. Immediately from above shone down rolling white light. Broken out. The peak of Tonglu was broken open. Intense dazzling light poured down like a waterfall. Strong winds swept in, howling and roaring. Xie Lian stood in the palm of that giant, one hand gripping tightly the bamboo hat on his head, one hand covering the snowstorm before his face. The oppressive air was swept away. Taking a deep breath of fresh, cold air, he loudly called out, San Lang. The first echo was still lingering, when he was then slightly embraced by a pair of arms from behind. Xie Lian first stiffened, but as he lowered his head, until he saw at his waist a section of crimson sleeve and silver wrist guard, only then did he relax. A heavy voice leaned into his ear and said, I'm going crazy. Hearing that, Xie Lian hastily turned around, his two hands embracing his face to comfort. Don't be crazy. Don't be crazy, I've already come out. It was Hua Cheng. Hua Cheng's black hair was disheveled, in his eyes was still a hint of distraction, the mask of joy and sorrow, which Xie Lian could not remove no matter what, but Hua Cheng with one hand took it off and threw it away. Xie Lian also didn't know why he wanted to use both hands to embrace his face, or if it was instinctual, perhaps wanting to comfort, and perhaps fearing his face would be ruined by the cold wind and snow. After all, however long Xie Lian was inside Tonglu, Hua Cheng also guarded at this volcano mouth for that long. Clearly having entered this place together, one of them was thrown out midway, fundamentally not knowing what was truly inside. How could he not want to go crazy? Hua Cheng embraced Xie Lian tightly, and said in a deep voice, Why couldn't I enter Tonglu? I even let you have to break out by yourself. I goddamn truly am. Xie Lian hastily said. Sanlang is fine, truly fine. Besides, I also didn't break out by myself. Hua Cheng finally regained a fleeting sense of clarity, saying, what? Brother, how did you get out? Xie Lian then said, it was you who helped me break out. Look. After speaking, he pointed forward, and Hua Cheng also looked in his direction. One only saw amidst the wind and snow, its face covered in mist, a gigantic human-shaped statue carved from the mountain rock, hazy and ethereal, seeming to hold up the sky and step upon the earth. At this moment the two people were standing on the palm of the gigantic statue. The face of this stone statue bore gentle features, with long eyebrows and graceful eyes, beautiful lips, the corners of its mouth slightly upturned, as if smiling and not smiling. One could call it affectionate yet not frivolous, say it was indifferent yet not cold. It was a compassionate yet handsome appearance. It was precisely Xie Lian's face. Xie Lian looked up at the face of the stone statue, and softly said, this is what you said, the most beautiful god statue carved by you, right? Hua Cheng also looked up at it, and after a long while, his gaze fell upon Xie Lian beside him, saying, This gigantic god statue made of lava was evidently carved into being while Hua Cheng was trapped in Mount Tonglu. Amidst countless trials and immense agony, over the past several hundred years, it had always been hidden in the deep, gloomy depths of Mount Tonglu, a part of it still covered by foliage. Mount Tonglu was its naturally treacherous and terrifying grotto, and it was also the only deity of this gigantic grotto. It and Mount Tonglu were one entity, their materials identical. Otherwise, if it were merely a god statue carved from ordinary rock, it fundamentally could not break apart Mount Tonglu. It could only be smashed to pieces. And if it were not Xie Lian himself, or if before they jumped down, Hua Cheng had not given Xie Lian a sufficiently strong amount of spiritual power, there would also be no way to move this god statue. Xie Lian turned to Hua Cheng, saying, therefore, Sanlang, I came out. It was you who broke out with me. Volume 5 Chapter 200. At this very moment, the two people suddenly simultaneously felt a tremor, simultaneously reined in the smiles on their lips, and became intently vigilant. Xie Lian slightly anxiously asked in a low voice, what's happening? Is this god statue trembling? Is it about to collapse? After all, the peak of Mount Tonglu at this height also had thousands upon thousands of god statues. If these god statues, because of breaking apart Mount Tonglu, also collapsed, he would surely have to regret it. Hua Cheng said, don't worry, it's nothing. It's the entire mountain that is moving. Sure enough, the accumulated snow on the mountain, like a great torrent, poured down, in some places already revealing the slope. It appears that something wanted to rush out from within Mount Tonglu. Hua Cheng stepped forward one step in front of Xie Lian. Xie Lian said, it's by Wu Xiang. He naturally would not truly think that the god statue's fist just now had the ability to smash Bai Wuxiang to death at most. It could only make that thing sleep for a little while. He was extremely silent. But after only a short while, the two people then felt a blast of scorching hot air blow onto their faces. This blast of air was sprayed out from the bottomless crater, and one could also smell the scent of sulfur. Xie Lian instinctively sensed danger approaching, and Hua Cheng also uttered in a deep voice, brother, run. Xie Lian shifted his hand seal, and immediately with Hua Cheng, along the great stone arm of the god statue, jumped up, standing on its shoulder. This god statue obeyed his command, took long strides, following the surging snow, sliding a few li, speeding through the snow waves. Because it extended its two arms, though its body was immensely heavy, it maintained balance very well. However, just as they slid to the middle of Mount Tonglu's slope, the tremor became even more violent, and this god statue also staggered and almost fell. Xie Lian and Hua Cheng simultaneously looked upwards, only to hear a booming explosion, and on the peak of Mount Tonglu, a pillar of pitch-black smoke shot straight up into the sky. A world-shaking sound, coupled with a pillar of smoke that destroyed heaven and earth. Xie Lian saw it, utterly terrified. But in an instant, the sky was immediately covered by black clouds. And within those black clouds covering the sky, countless human faces, limbs, bodies were rolling in agony, of every kind of terror. This situation Xie Lian had seen once several hundred years ago, now finally saw it again. Xie Lian asked, who are those people? Hua Cheng replied with a solemn expression, the vengeful spirits of Wu Yong Kingdom. It is feared that all the people of Wu Yong Kingdom who died due to the volcanic eruption were all there. Suddenly Hua Cheng exclaimed, brother, out in Tenjiang below. He had not yet finished speaking, when Xie Lian had already controlled the right hand of that divine statue, striking out with one palm. Outside below in the ice and snow-covered land, amidst a vast expanse of white, a white-robed figure, it was Bai Wuxiang. He almost merged into one with the snow, yet still could not escape the eyes of the two people. The thick accumulated snow was struck by this palm, causing it to vibrate into a vast flying white wave, yet it did not hit him. Having previously been struck a blow in the dark, Bai Wuxiang naturally had to be on guard. His white figure flashed, and an instant later, the figure appeared before the knee of the divine statue. The large divine statue, without a moment's thought, struck its own knee with another palm. But as the palm reached midway, Xie Lian reacted in time, gritted his teeth and exerted force, reluctantly pulling it back, secretly thinking, truly dangerous, truly dangerous. Just now Mount Tonglu's peak had been breached by this divine statue. If Xie Lian were to let it strike its own knee now, hard against hard, if control was not good, then a leg would be completely severed. Perhaps this was precisely the purpose why Bai Wuxiang intentionally pet up. While Xie Lian on this side was urgently pulling back on the other side, Hua Cheng slowly drew out his slender silver scimitar, pointed at Bai Wuxiang and shouted, "Get down here." Bai Wuxiang raised his head to look at them. Hua Cheng said indifferently, "This god is not someone you can contend with me for." Suddenly, Xie Lian cried out in alarm, "San Lang!" He pointed towards the peak of Tonglu. After spewing out a column of black smoke, something else also surged out with it. Blazing red, moving and burning. Lava. Blazing red lava along with rolling black smoke, intermingled, filled heaven and earth, surging downwards towards Tonglu. Seizing this opportunity, Bai Wuxiang leaped away, disappearing into the snow. Xie Lian did not try to chase after him to catch him. He shouted loudly, "Run fast!" That colossal stone divine statue, hearing his shouted command, took long strides with several rumbling explosions, leaped down towards Tonglu. Its 2 feet flattened the foot of the mountain. The earth shook and mountains quaked. But, though it was fast, the speed of the lava and black smoke was also not slow, almost clinging close behind. After landing on the ground, Xie Lian also dared not stay any longer. He commanded this divine statue to stand up and continue carrying them to run. Running and running, Xie Lian then felt its speed gradually slowing down. In his heart he felt strange that something was wrong. He was wondering if it was an illusion when he felt the divine statue carrying the 2 people stop, kneel down. No longer obeying his command, it stopped, kneeling on one leg on the ground. After kneeling down, it slowly leaned its body forward, as if its physical strength could not support it, about to collapse. Xie Lian's heart immediately leaped to his throat. This is bad. It's about to fall. And that black smoke and lava were about to catch up to them. Right at this moment, Xie Lian suddenly felt his waist tighten. Hua Cheng pulled him closer, one hand embracing his waist, the other lifting his chin, pressing his cool lips against his. Xie Lian's eyes widened. A refreshing, joyful current instantly filled his chest, flowing through his entire body. His whole being seemed to be filled with vitality. This kiss was extremely brief. An instant later, Hua Cheng then parted his lips, saying, "Gidge, try again." Xie Lian immediately became spirited. His hand seals reappeared, and that divine statue that was about to fall suddenly extended its 2 hands, propping itself up on the ground. After kneeling down, it slowly leaned its body forward, as if its physical strength could not support it, about to collapse. Xie Lian's heart immediately leaped to his throat. This is bad. It's about to fall. And that black smoke and lava were about to catch up to them. Right at this moment, Xie Lian suddenly felt his waist tighten. Hua Cheng pulled him closer, one hand embracing his waist, the other lifting his chin, pressing his cool lips against his. Xie Lian's eyes widened. A refreshing, joyful current instantly filled his chest, flowing through his entire body. His whole being seemed to be filled with vitality. This kiss was extremely brief. An instant later, Hua Cheng then parted his lips, saying, "Gidge, try again." 4 limbs and 100 bones, hands and feet with 100 bones, meaning the entire body. Xie Lian immediately regained his composure. His hand seals reappeared, and the god statue that was about to fall suddenly stretched out 2 hands, supporting itself on the ground. Immediately it stood up for the second time. It turned out that this god statue wasn't unable to support itself due to a lack of physical strength, but rather due to spiritual power. To manipulate this giant statue, the amount of spiritual power consumed was enormous. The spiritual power Hua Cheng had lent Xie Lian earlier had been completely used up, so it naturally had to stumble, sway, and slow down. Only when it was transmitted spiritual power once again did it come alive once more. This time it ran even faster than before, and its movements were also more agile. Hua Cheng then said, "Gidge, run faster." Xie Lian also wanted to go faster still, but he was worried that doing so would consume too much spiritual power, so he dared not take the risk. "If we go any faster, can you sustain it? What if the spiritual power isn't enough?" Hua Cheng whispered by his ear, "It won't happen, you just need to run. Never need to fear, I am here." Hua Cheng stood behind him, his 2 hands steadily supporting his waist. It turned out there really was such a person, as if the entire world had to stand behind him. Xie Lian took a deep breath, closed his eyes and said good. In an instant he stretched out his hand, released all of his spiritual power, used the most powerful spiritual seal and roared run. Boom! 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 The giant god statue darted as swiftly as the wind, covering several miles in a single step. Large ravines it leaped over in one stride. Hills and mountains it flew over in one bound, indeed leaving the dark clouds and lava far behind. It truly was a colossal monster. With every step it was like a meteor falling from the sky, unleashing a powerful shockwave. Countless solitary demons scattered across Mount Tonglu all felt the ground violently shaking. So terrified their faces turned pale. Raising their heads to look up, they saw dark clouds covering the sky and felt a bit surprised, but they did not pay much attention. After all, this was Mount Tonglu. Any strange phenomenon appearing was not a strange matter. Moreover, weren't there vengeful spirits in the dark clouds? They themselves carried vengeful spirits, and had seen many every day, so what was there to fear? But then when they saw that enormous martial god rushing thump 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 so fast, beyond the imagination of any demon, they were all struck dumb with fear. What is that? Immediately a chorus of terrified cries erupted. It's too big. They had never seen such a huge being until now. Truly too terrifying. Xie Lian had originally intended to avoid the imperial city of Wuyong, lest his god statue trample these 200-year-old historically valuable houses into a pile of ruins. He then remembered something and asked Sanlang, "Are General Pei and Master Rain nearby?" Huacheng replied yes. Xie Lian quickly told the god statue, turn back, I've forgotten a few things. Go back and get them." Immediately this god statue retreated a few steps. As it was preparing to turn back, Xie Lian suddenly felt his entire body shake. His soles felt light, and his whole person flew up. In mid-air, he only then realized what had just happened. The god statue had fallen on its back. Xie Lian and Huacheng steadily fell into the god statue's chest. Xie Lian, while manipulating it to stand up again, also looked forward. The thing that caused this god statue to fall was not him but something else. A towering mountain. Of course this mountain was nowhere near as large as Mount Tonglu, but compared to this god statue it was a bit bigger. Xie Lian remembered very clearly that when they first arrived, they had not passed this mountain, so he cast his gaze towards the direction behind it. Just as expected, behind it, 2 towering structures nearly as tall as mountains rose. 3 great mountains blocked the god statue's path. Huacheng said, "Gij, be careful. They are Precai. Sali, the guardians of Mount Tonglu. Old Sickness Death." Book 5 Chapter 201. The colossal stone divine statue had just slowly crawled up from the ground when the first strange mountain immediately rushed in to attack it. Xie Lian remembered Huacheng had once said that at first it was pursued extremely tightly by 3 large mountains at Mount Tonglu. Clearly not daring to be careless, instinctively intending to flip over in the air once to cross above its head. But he, after all, had never tried to manipulate such a tall and large divine statue. It was unavoidable that his limbs were flustered, unable to jump up, instead was struck down for the second time. Boom, the heavens and earth seemed to tremble. That colossal stone divine statue was thrown to the vicinity of Wurong Imperial City, crushing a road. A slight movement immediately brought a sound of boom boom boom. It was the sound of splendid houses and palaces being shattered by the divine statue. Amidst the swaying tremors, Xie Lian almost fell. Fortunately Huacheng seized his hand tightly. "Follow me." He took Xie Lian, jumping a few steps onto the head of that enormous divine statue. Originally, the small jade coronet Huaguan martial god used to tie his hair was like a small balcony. The 2 of them jumped onto this jade coronet, finally having a stable foothold much firmer compared to standing on the shoulders or the palm of the divine statue. Before a breath could even be exhaled, the strange mountain had returned, bumping that divine statue to stagger back a few steps. Fortunately this time Xie Lian had prepared early, not falling, but beneath his feet he accidentally trampled a string of houses. Xie Lian couldn't help but feel a pang of heartache, secretly thinking, truly sinful, truly sinful. Having then controlled this divine statue to tiptoe cautiously, avoiding houses and running out, Xie Lian said glumly, "Why are they chasing and attacking me? What have I done?" Huacheng replied, "They're not just chasing Gij. Everyone is being chased and attacked by them. But Gij's current appearance looks especially attention-grabbing." Xie Lian said something so large, of course it's attention-grabbing. Before his words had finished, the 3 mountains once again jointly attacked, encircling the divine statue, and continuously exerting pressure towards the center, as if wanting to crush it. The divine statue could not move, Xie Lian also could not move. He mobilized it with all his strength to push them away, But it still couldn't budge, only afraid it had no strength left to resist. He was thinking if there was another way to escape, inadvertently stepping back one step, suddenly leaning against a chest. As he turned his head back, he saw Hua Cheng holding his two shoulders, saying, "Fight with all your might. Nothing will be a problem, they are not your opponents. In this world, there is nothing that can impede your steps." His chest was like the most solid backing. Suddenly, at that moment, Xie Lian's resolve became 100 times more confident, his entire body enveloped by an abundant clear current. A full-force strike finally broke through the encirclement. Boom! The three strange mountains were powerfully pushed away by it nearly a mile, rocks and earth flew, dust billowed. However, although they retreated slightly, they were about to attack a second time. Xie Lian's two hands instantly changed 5-6 hand seals, saying, "Don't you block my way." The enormous stone divine statue flew into the sky, its 2 feet stepping down on the peaks of 2 mountains, at the same time, reaching out a hand to grasp the treasured sword at its waist, drawing the sword. The consecutive movements were like flowing water and drifting clouds. That divine statue completed them smoothly, with irresistible force like splitting bamboo. Not even half a point of awkwardness, completely no different from a real person. Its momentum was instantly spurred. Rising, Xie Lian shouted, "I shall cleave." Ouch, or should I cleave a bit later? He had prepared well to unleash a magnificent sword strike, capable of cleaving mountains and tearing the sky. Yet when drawing the sword, he suddenly felt something was wrong. As he looked above, he instantly felt embarrassed. That divine statue had indeed drawn the sword, but in its hand was only the sword hilt. What happened? Where is the blade? Xie Lian was utterly bewildered, while Hua Cheng was at the side, 2F. Ingers rubbing his glabella. "Gage, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, the blade of this divine statue's sword I did not make. It was my oversight." "Oh, that was only natural." Hua Cheng, on the mountain-breaking rock wall, erected the statue. The divine statue's clothing was in layers. The treasured sword at its waist was concealed beneath the sleeves and robe flaps, never exposed, therefore, only a sword hilt was carved. The divine statue, having had spiritual power imbued into it, after acting because there was no specific carving for a blade, naturally could not suddenly produce a blade. Hua Cheng slightly furrowed his brow, with a serious expression. He said, "I miscalculated. It's still not refined enough. Next time I will carve out every tiny detail." "Oh." Xie Lian felt he was sincere, hurriedly said, No, it's already very refined. Truly. In short, without a blade. Then there was no way to cleave the mountains. Immediately afterwards, Xie Lian instantly changed his strategy to flee. He quickly controlled the divine statue to jump down from these 2 mountain peaks, tossing away the hilt of the sword that was no longer needed, and quickly continued running like mad. The two stood on the jade crown atop the divine statue's head, the wild wind howling before them, black hair, white robes, and red sleeves fluttering. Even while fleeing, it was a beautiful sight. A silver butterfly flew to Xie Lian's ear, and the voices of several people transmitted from within. Quickly drawing him in, "Is that Feng Xian and Mu Qing over there? And Lord Rainmaster along with General Pei?" Indeed, familiar voices transmitted from the silver butterfly on that side. Pei Ming opened his mouth. "I say, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, you don't need to ask so loudly." Xie Lian said, "How inconvenient, my spiritual power is too abundant right now, please wait while I control it a little." "Oh." Mu Qing's voice also transmitted, "What? You said your spiritual power is too abundant? You?" Xie Lian asked, "Have you all gathered? Where are you all now?" Mu Qing said, "We, along with General Pei and young General Pei, have all gathered. Currently, everyone is in the forest near the Wu Rong River, preparing to retreat outwards together." Feng Xin's voice rose, "What happened on your side? Just now, Tong Lu seemed to emit a very strong disturbance. Do you want us to come back and help?" Xie Lian hastily said, "No need. It's best if everyone waits there. We'll come to pick you up immediately, and we'll talk once we meet." "Ah, we've arrived." Ahead was the dry Wu Rong River. The divine statue crossed the riverbed and then squatted down beside the edge of the forest. Just then Xie Lian saw Feng Xian and Mu Qing emerge from the forest, looking left and right, seemingly searching for someone. But they looked in the wrong direction and moreover didn't think to simply glance upwards, which was why they didn't see Xie Lian and Hua Cheng at all. Feng Xian turned to the silver butterfly. "Why?" and asked, "Your Highness, have you not arrived yet? Where are you?" Xie Lian placed both hands to his mouth, directly shouting downwards, "I'm already here. Up here, look up, right above your heads." "Oh." Only then did those two realize that they were both covered by a gigantic shadow, and they simultaneously slowly lifted their heads. Immediately, they simultaneously saw an exceedingly enormous Xie Lian, squatting beside the forest, lowering his head to look at them. On its face, it even bore the appearance of Xie Lian, smiling with extreme benevolence. Hua Chang had no desire to look down at those two at all, standing to one side with his arms crossed, his expression reluctant. Xie Lian, however, lowered his face and waved his hand. Do you see? Here. But because the visual shock brought by the colossal Xie Lian was too immense, the first time they saw it, it was truly very difficult to notice anything else. Mu Qing's entire vision was completely occupied by this face, muttering in his mouth, "I must have gone insane." Feng Xin's eyes were also entirely filled with this face, muttering along, what the hell, what the hell, what the hell, what in the damn world is this? Xie Lian. Hua Chang furrowed his brow, seemingly restraining himself greatly not to burst out laughing. To be honest, no one had ever truly seen such a massive divine statue, carved so lifelike. Previously, the largest divine statue was Jun Wu's, but it was only half the HT of this divine statue. Feng Xian and Mu Qing were too overly shocked, to the point that Xie Lian had to call out several times before they noticed where the divine statue's true form was. The others also successively emerged from the forest, and as soon as they lifted their heads, almost all of them were so frightened by this enormous divine statue that they nearly sprained their ankles. Xie Lian was both crying and laughing, instructing the divine statue to lower its hand to the ground, opening its palm, and said, "Mount Tonglu has erupted. I'm afraid the fire will burn here in a moment, and there are 3 strange mountains that might chase after us at any time. Everyone climb aboard, it'll take you all away." Everyone eagerly climbed onto the divine statue's hand, finding their own positions. Xie Lian on the jade crown smelled the pungent odor of sulfur in the air. Turning his head to look back, black smoke and ash were rapidly spreading. He withdrew the divine statue's hand, stood up, and continued taking long strides. Pei Ming and his group, surprisingly, were still quite all right after their initial shock, but Feng Xian and Mu Qing, however, had yet to recover their senses. It was probably because the face, expression, and physical form of the divine statue's true manifestation were all too familiar to them, which was why the shock was particularly great after being magnified so immensely. Feng Xian, already standing on the divine statue's shoulder, still couldn't believe. "It, who made this? Who carved it? Why have I never seen such a thing before? Never even heard of it?" Hua Chang feigned a smile and said, "There are many things you've never seen before." Although no one explicitly stated it, almost everyone, especially Feng Xian and Mu Qing, came to the same unspoken conclusion. It was this person who did it. Mu Qing said, "It's truly unbelievable. What did you do to make it work? How much spiritual power does this need? Do you have enough? Aren't you completely without spiritual power?" This time Hua Chang, on the contrary, did not answer. Xie Lian glanced at him, completely shut his mouth and mumbled, "Ah, this?" Pei Ming spoke on his behalf. "You can borrow it, right? Many things are simple." "Ha ha ha. Indeed." All the demons, ghosts, and monsters along the way, encountering reverse-flowing lava and powerfully spouting fierce flames, also realized something big was amiss. Seeing many people climbing onto the colossal stone god statue, they hurriedly cried out, "Wait for me too. Me, I'm coming too. Take us up, take us up." Hua Cheng immediately replied, "Get down." A wave of silver butterflies flew out, glittering brightly, followed by a chorus of miserable wails. Inu, holding Guzi sleeping as if dead, cried out from below, "City Lord! Crown Prince Highness!" Just now, those hollow corpse rats suddenly rioted, gathering into gangs and factions, moving about, as if they want to run towards outside Tonglu Mountain. The rain master, riding a black ox, gazed at the sky with focused attention. "In the black clouds, there is something that also seems to really want to fly out." Those words were not wrong. In the black clouds, some things were struggling, all of them resentful spirits. They craved fresh living human bodies to attach themselves to become the human face disease. In Tonglu Mountain there were no living people. If not demons, ghosts, and monsters, then they were divine officials whom they could not infiltrate. Naturally, they wanted to fly out. Thousands upon thousands of black smoke human faces twisted, trailing long tails, circling in the sky like monstrous serpents or insects. Xie Lian's hand trembled slightly, but he still calmly said, "Tonglu Mountain has a barrier. The outside cannot enter, the inside cannot exit. Those resentful spirits should temporarily not be able to fly out." Unexpectedly, before his words were finished, Hua Chang suddenly gripped his hand tightly. Xie Lian's heart also tensed up, and he hurriedly grasped his hand, saying, "What's wrong? Is it that I spent a little too excessively? Sorry, I really should have used a little less." Hua Chang covered his right eye with one hand and replied, "No, Gij, you don't need to worry about this matter. It's because the barrier of Tonglu Mountain has been broken." Xie Lian was flustered. "What? Broken? He had just said there was a barrier, so not to worry. Now how did it turn into this situation? Huacheng said broken. I'm afraid Bai Wuxiang himself opened it. Those things are about to fly out. Volume 5 Chapter 202. If these resentful spirits were truly allowed to fly out, wouldn't the human face disease erupt a third time? Xie Lian immediately said, we must think of a way to stop them. Mu Qing stood on the shoulder of the god statue, his black robes and black hair constantly blown into disarray. What method is there to stop them? The god statue paused its steps. Dust below flew up in a hazy cloud. Xie Lian said, everyone hold your breath first. Having said that, this god statue lifted its legs and ran, chasing closely after the black smoke clouds flying above. The stone statue raised its hand and delivered a palm strike. The palm's force was world-shaking if used on the ground. It could certainly knock over a 100-year-old ancient tree. But ultimately, no matter how much it scattered, it could only destroy that much. Xie Lian could not help but think to himself, if only there was a sword. With just a glance, Huacheng immediately saw through his thoughts. Gige, wanting a sword is not without a way. Xie Lian rejoiced. What way? Huacheng said. Then we must look at the unhappy faces of those various divine officials. Feng Xian said, if you have any method, just speak directly, there's no need to say such things to His Highness. Xie Lian also somewhat guessed your meaning is, to let General Pei and the others combine forces, transforming their bodies into a sword? Who? Acheng nodded. Not wrong. In Mount Tonglu, divine officials have their spiritual powers suppressed, but this place has many martial gods. If 4 people manifest their spiritual bodies, combining forces to attack, then the might will not be too inferior. Pei Ming took the lead to respond. This Pei feels this idea is very good. Mu Qing was still doubtful. Can it really work? How many martial gods are there here? 3 people. Pei Su and Yin Yu have lost all spiritual power, and the Rainmaster is not a martial god at most. There are only Pei Ming, Feng Xian and Mu Qing. Pei Ming corrected. Not right, it's 4 people. Qing is also here. Ah. Yin Yu hesitated slightly, one hand holding Guzi, the other holding a roly-poly toy, when suddenly it leaped out. Unexpectedly, even without opening the seal, this roly-poly toy could already shake wildly, and it emitted a series of screeching, cackling sounds, incredibly noisy. Everyone's ears were pierced by this sound, and they quickly covered their ears repeatedly. Yin Yu hastily sealed it again, took out another roly-poly toy, his face covered in beads of sweat. I'm truly sorry. I grabbed the wrong one. The one just now was Green Ghost Qirong. This is the correct one. Having said that, he tossed the roly-poly toy he had just pulled out into the air. Red smoke billowed thickly, and a youthful figure appeared within the dense smoke, falling downwards. The divine statue quickly extended a hand to receive him. The youth stretched out, Landy Ing on its palm, scratched a clump of blood-stained curly hair, raised his head, and saw a crowd of people suddenly appear before him, looking utterly bewildered. Yin Yu had previously secretly hidden behind others, but unexpectedly, Quan Yizhan discovered him. He jumped up and loudly exclaimed, Senior brother. Oh! Quan Yizhan rushed over in an instant, thudding loudly. Yin Yu got a headache the moment he saw him. He would rather let him listen to the screeching for 3 days and 3 nights than speak a single word to Quan Yizhan. Fortunately, Pei Ming grabbed Quan Yizhan in one go. Come, let's work, Qiying. We can reminisce after we're done. Quan Yizhan didn't understand what was happening. Moreover, he already had a prejudice against Pei Ming and was about to casually throw a punch, but just as he looked up, he saw Xie Lian above, clasping his hands before his chest, sincerely saying to him, You've worked hard, Qiying. Oh! Although he completely didn't grasp the situation, scratching his head, he still decided to join. As for Mu Qing, to want him to combine into a sword with the others, it wasn't that he had no opinions, but no matter what, they had to gather 4 people come what may. He alone couldn't simply wave his hand and not do it, so he immediately fell silent. Once done, on the palm of the divine statue, the 4 individuals, Pei Ming, Feng Xian, Quan Yizhan and Mu Qing, lined up one after another. Hua Cheng's elbow rested on the edge of the jade coffin. Glancing over, are the last 2 people perhaps arranged incorrectly? Theoretically, it should indeed be Pei Ming, Feng Xian, Mu Qing, and then Quan Yizhan to be logical. Because relatively speaking, Quan Yizhan's spiritual power is not too stable. If he were to enter the sword formation, he might just break the moment it swung. Xie Lian stood to the side, wiping sweat, and said, No, it's not wrong. Feng Xian and Mu Qing, those 2, absolutely cannot be arranged together, because they could start a brawl just by waving their hands and feet, so there must definitely be someone else in between them. Hearing that, Huacheng furrowed his brow, his expression indicating that he thought it would be even better to just let them fight to the death. He then lowered his gaze to look below. The entire bodies of the 4 individuals emitted spiritual light, growing stronger and stronger, extending and merging into one body, finally, transforming into a spiritual light sword. The moment the sword took shape, the divine statue immediately tossed it up, extended its hand, and grabbed it tightly in one go. With the sharp sword in hand, Xie Lian instantly felt as if a tiger had grown wings. His momentum greatly surged, and he struck with a single blow. The long swirling black tail of Qi was severed by a sword strike carrying spiritual light, and after a long period of screeching it fell silent. Taking advantage of the victory, Xie Lian freely brandished the sword beneath the blossoms, carving through 10,000 ghosts, scattering them into pieces, like wind sweeping away clouds. As the sword blade swept past, the sky like a spring flower painting was blown apart everywhere. A truly beautiful sight. The demons, monsters, and ghosts below all stopped to watch, their faces stunned, only realizing and fleeing in all directions when the thousand-gene divine statue stomped its foot towards them. While in the heat of battle, suddenly the divine statue's feet stumbled unexpectedly, as if it was about to lean over and fall. Xie Lian quickly braced the sword against the ground, barely stabilizing it. The martial gods who formed the sword asked in unison, "What's wrong? His Royal Highness the Crown Prince? Keep fighting. They're gathering again." Xie Lian had manipulated the divine statue for so long. He already felt somewhat fatigued, his head covered in sweat, his spirit under high tension, and he replied, "It's nothing. It's just that his spiritual power was about to be burned clean." He suddenly turned his head. Hua Cheng was already standing beside him within an inch, seemingly wanting to reach out towards him. Immediately, Xie Lian at any cost. He leaned forward, taking both hands to cup Hua Cheng's face, slightly tiptoed, closed his eyes and pressed his lips against him. Feng Xian. Mu Tin. Guin Chan. Buimin haha. Haha. Raising Hua Cheng's face wasn't enough since things had already calmed. To this, Xie Lian frankly thought it would be better to absorb a bit more this time. Therefore, his arm tightly wrapped around Hua Cheng's neck, and he kissed even deeper. The mental fatigue from earlier was instantly swept clean, and his whole body was filled with spiritual power. And at this moment, the sword in the god statue's hand let out a chorus of shouts and cries. Feng Xian was startled. "What is this doing? What are the two of you doing?" "Your Highness?" Xie Lian accidentally choked, only then pulling apart. He didn't dare to look down and meet their eyes, but instead turned his face to the sky and replied, borrowing spiritual power. It's just borrowing spiritual power. Very appropriate." Mu Tin was no less startled. Borrowing spiritual power fundamentally doesn't need to be like that, does it? A touch of hands would be fine too. Xie Lian also didn't know what he was saying anymore. Answering wildly and incoherently, "Ha ha ha ha. Everyone has seen through it. Actually, it's not borrowing spiritual power. Ha 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 ha." Seeing him like that, Hua Cheng also laughed heartily. He used both hands to lift Xie Lian's face, lowered a kiss to his forehead, and gently said, "Don't be anxious, Gidge." Oh. Strangely enough, hearing him say that, Xie Lian suddenly accepted it. He pretended not to hear Feng Xian and Mu Tin's voices, making a solemn face and forming a hand seal simultaneously. The giant god statue pulled the spiritual light sword from the ground, chopping Ji wildly and forcefully, as if unable to control the strength within its body. Guin Chan suddenly admired, so it really was borrowing spiritual power just now. No wonder it became so strong. Mu Tin couldn't help but say, "What the dog? You understand what the..." He immediately probably thought that such a thing should not be explained in detail to a child like Guin Chan, so he rigidly changed his tone. "Yes, that's right, it is indeed borrowing spiritual power." Buimin laughed heartily. "Indeed, that's right, but you also can't casually let others borrow. Do you understand, Qing?" Feng Xian? What are you all saying? You still believe it's true? Although the power had been strengthened, no matter what was said, these resentful spirits were enough to cover the sky, and there was no large net to catch them all. Upon seeing the giant god so formidable, the resentful spirits hurriedly turned their heads and fled, leaving behind their tails flying far into the air, like a large tadpole with a human face. Xie Lian shouted, "Chase them!" Unexpectedly, before they had even chased a few steps, the stone god statue suddenly tilted without any warning, crashing down on one side. Just a moment ago, it had clearly absorbed abundant spiritual power, and Xie Lian was also in an extremely good state. He didn't understand why it suddenly happened like this. When the stone statue hadn't completely fallen, Xie Lian looked down below, only then discovering that a large hole had appeared on one leg of the god statue, with rock debris tumbling out of the cave mouth. The figure of a white-clothed person swayed down from above, paused far away, and then immediately disappeared, as if appearing and vanishing like a ghost, leaving no trace. That was Bai Wuxiang. He with bare hands damaged one leg of the god statue. The god statue crashed down with a rumble, but fortunately, those on the stone statue were not ordinary mortals, so their reactions were extremely quick. They jumped down a step ahead, landing safely on the ground. Xie Lian and Hua Cheng jumped onto the god statue's chest. Xie Lian tried to summon it to stand up, but it was extremely difficult. The god statue lay on the ground slowly struggling, looking a little battered. Mu Tin from within the sword array asked, "How is it? Can it stand up again?" Gwen Not Chan said, "Is it out of spiritual power again? Does it need to borrow more?" Buimin replied, "No. This time it's not a spiritual power issue. Qiang don't remember this matter so deeply, forget it quickly." Xie Lian said, "I'm afraid the injury is a bit serious. It's not suitable to move anymore." Although the stone block had no sensation of pain, if it were forced to stand up and continue attacking, the injured leg might be completely lost. Not only would the attack power be greatly reduced, but this was, after all, Hua Cheng's masterpiece that he cared about, and also the god statue Xie Lian liked the most. If it were truly destro, yet like this, it would inevitably cause heartache. Seeing the enemy fall, the resentful spirits in the air jumped and cheered madly, flying in all directions. Could they really just watch them escape like that? Looking to one side, Hua Cheng's expression contained anger, precisely anger at by Wu Xiang. He pondered for a moment, then called Gij. Precisely at this moment, deep within the layered black clouds, a dazzling ray of white light was revealed. As if above this cloud layer, something was shining brightly. Immediately after that, the second ray, the third ray, the fourth ray. Innumerable dazzling white light rays pierced through, piercing the black clouds, piercing the resentful spirits. The intense spiritual light almost blinded one's eyes. The various divine officials were no longer unfamiliar with it. The entire Xianjing was almost daily filled with such spiritual light surrounding it. Quan No has arrived. Volume 5 Chapter 203. The intense spiritual light illuminated the resentful spirits. Large masses successively dissolved into smoke and mist, tearing apart the sea of clouds. A white-armored martial god, holding a sword, walked out. It was indeed Quan No. Everyone, as if having just seen their parents reborn, hurriedly cheered, "Ah! Emperor!" Only lacking streaming tears. Quan No, bearing wind and light, calmly and leisurely descended to the ground, saying, "Do not panic, do not panic. Esteemed ones, is everything all right?" The four people within the sword array quickly dispersed, transforming back to themselves. Buimin said, "Emperor, are you not guarding Xianjing? How is it that you have personally come here?" Quan No replied, hearing Vusu's spiritual communication report, that the barrier of Mount Tonglu has been breached, the situation critical. I immediately rushed here. Everyone turned their heads to look, seeing Vusu still riding on the black ox. All murmured in understanding, so that was how it was. If the barrier was breached, then surely spiritual communication could be used. But because at that time everyone's blood had momentarily surged, all wanting to first strike down whatever was up there first, almost no one remembered the matter of spiritual communication. Ta Lin stepped forward, saying, "Emperor, it is Bok Vo Tuong. He has returned." Quan No nodded slightly, saying, "I also surmised he would be persistent and not give up." Ta Lin said, "This fellow appears and disappears like a ghost. You have just arrived, and we do not know where he has slipped off to." Quan No spoke to reassure them, "It is not a concern. First, deal with those resentful spirits, then go look for him." Everyone looked up at the sky, where black clouds churned, about to be gradually swept clean by Quan No's illumination. Buimin said, "Is that why this time the Ghost King's emergence was hindered?" Ta Lin said, "Consider it so. After all, it was this thing that broke open Tonglu, not anyone else." Everyone's gaze collectively, too, reneged towards one direction again. After ceasing to be manipulated, this gigantic divine statue lay obediently on the ground. It was finely carved and meticulously polished, falling down like a small mountain. Ta Lin stood very close to it, raising a hand to gently touch its cold stone cheek, turning to ask Hoa Tan San Lang, "What should be done with it now?" Hoa Tan seemed to be deep in thought. Hearing his question, immediately recovered his wits, replying, "Gij, no need to worry. First it needs to be repaired, so for now let's leave it here." Ta Lin said, "Can it be repaired?" Hoa Tan said, "Of course it can be, as long as there are primeval stones from Tonglu. I will certainly repair it, helping it stand up as before." Ta Lin said, "Then let's place it here for now. Currently, over on the other side of Tonglu, the volcano is erupting, and we do not know when it will be safe again." Precisely at this moment, in the air, resentful spirits swirled into a whirlwind, sweeping towards this side. Everyone, unaware of the anomaly, focused their minds to look closely at this place, and seemed to discover the Wu Rong Divine Temple previously buried in the earth. Originally, these resentful spirits could not escape the extremely powerful spiritual light, and would sooner or later dissolve into smoke and mist, But suddenly, a large number of resentful spirits plunged into the divine temple, as if completely sucked in, disappearing without a trace. Emotin exclaimed in surprise, "What is happening?" Ta Lin secretly thought it was not good, and hastily said, "It is Bok Vo Tuong. He is there, opening a 1,000-mile land pull, taking all these resentful spirits away." Quan No waved his hand, lifting the roof of the divine temple, and a piece of buried earth was also pulled out with it. However, inside, apart from traces of a grand array, there was nothing. Fong Tin said, "What does he intend to do? Where has he laid out the array? Where were they sent?" If they had returned to the past and been brought before the Lingwen temple, it wouldn't have taken half an incense stick's time to investigate where it was. But currently, the newly appointed civil officials were utterly clueless. At this crucial moment, not a soul could be found, and Feng Xian angrily cursed, "Damn it. Normally they puff themselves up so much, vying to chatter and volunteer to demonstrate their worth, but now when they should be showing off, where have they hidden? I absolutely will not utter the phrase, 'The Lingwen temple's efficiency has declined.'" At this moment, Hua Cheng's voice rang out in the imperial city. Everyone turned towards him, just in time to see Hua Cheng lower his 2 slender fingers from his temples. He continued, "This fellow delivered those things to 7 or 8 different cities, in completely disparate directions. For now, only the imperial city has been traced, because over there, the malevolent energy surged in an instant." Oh, the civil officials of Xianjing were proving useless. They even had to rely on the leader of the ghost realm to help them determine the direction and location of the concealed evil artifacts. The heavenly officials present could not avoid losing a bit of face. Yet, with the situation so critical, this feeling passed in an instant. Mu Qing spoke, "By Yi Huashi's intent is all too clear to focus on sending those things to places densely populated with common people. Once the human face disease erupts, it will spread with extreme speed. The imperial city has the largest populace. Naturally, it would not be spared." Pei Ming added, "Deal with it swiftly, it is urgent, otherwise if delayed, the consequences will be unimaginable." Jun Wu, also troubled by the replacement civil officials in the Lingwen temple, remained silent, turning instead to Hua Cheng. "Could Your Excellency investigate the location more thoroughly?" Hua Cheng replied, "I am currently verifying within the specified range. It won't be much longer. Inyu, you may take over." Inyu hastily replied, "Understood." Inyu had originally been demoted by Jun Wu, and though Jun Wu had merely been handling public affairs, Inyu still felt tense when encountering him. After a moment, having communicated telepathically with his subordinates from Ghost City, he then carefully reported the specific locations: 300 li to the south, 270 li to the north. Jun Wu ordered Feng Xian, "Nanyang, you go south." Feng Xian did not immediately comply, but hesitated for a moment. Xie Lian guessed he wished to find Jian Lan and her child, and just as he was about to speak, Feng Xian let out an acknowledgement, then departed alone for an assigned position. Pei Ming, ever proactive, asked, "I'll go north then?" Jun Wu said, "Of course you go." Pei Ming nodded, turned and walked a few steps. Feeling Pei Su also trailing him, he promptly turned his head back. "Your injuries are not good, and the poison has not yet cleared. How about you follow the Rainmaster first?" Pei Su questioned, bewildered. "General, was I poisoned?" Pei Ming patted his shoulder sympathetically. "You can barely form a coherent sentence, yet you dare claim you're not poisoned?" After speaking, he tilted his head slightly, nodding in salutation to the Rainmaster across from him, then departed himself. Jun Wu continued, "Qing, go west. Remember not to act recklessly." Kuan Yizhen asked again, perplexed, "What for, going west? What exactly are we doing right now?" Oh, one could not blame him for not understanding what was happening. Presumably, he still hadn't grasped why he was beaten, why he was buried in the wall, why he was turned into a roly-poly doll, or why he was fused into a sword. He truly hadn't understood the situation for even a single moment. Seeing this, Inyu sighed and spoke up, "Let me lead him. I can explain along the way." Aside from Inyu, it was doubtful anyone else possessed enough patience for him. Hearing this, Kuan Yizhen immediately shouted, "All right." Mu Qing waited for half a day, yet it was not his turn. He could not help but ask, "Your Majesty, what about me?" Jun Wu in turn looked at him for a moment, then reminded him, "Xianzhan, you haven't forgotten something, have you?" Mu Qing, perplexed, "What thing?" Jun Wu said, "You are still under detention." Oh! Mu Qing's face instantly turned ashen. He had, in truth, completely forgotten about this matter. Furthermore, it wasn't merely him, almost everyone else had forgotten the incident of Mu Qing escaping Xianjing with dark arts used to create a fetus spirit. The suspicion hanging over him had not yet been cleared. Quan No said, "It's not necessary." A moment later, upon returning to Xianjing, the duration of detention will increase. Mu Tin was startled. Emperor Lord, it truly wasn't me. Quan No said, when the matter is investigated clearly, and the culprit revealed, you will naturally be released. Otherwise, currently letting you run wild, what kind of order would that be? Mu Tin was completely unresigned, but could do nothing else, only replied with a low yes. Seeing Mu Tin aggrieved, Hoa Tan did not bother to conceal, but laughed loudly. Mu Tin shot him a glare, then looked towards Ta Lin beside him, not knowing what he thought of, but his complexion grew increasingly green. The remaining people, as for Vu Su, not being a martial god, nor relying on strength, only stated clearly that if needed, then by giving a signal she would be ready to assist. T. Hen quietly withdrew. Ta Lin was naturally the one assigned the most arduous task, the imperial city. As for Quan No, he had to remain to deal with 3 strange mountains, along with Bok Vo Tuong, who was very likely nearby. Once assignments were divided, Hoa Tan threw the dice, opening the land-shrinking array, and Ta Lin departed with him. The imperial city in the deep night, the main streets around were quiet, without a sound, every single house had its doors closed and bolted. Ta Lin and Hoa Tan stepped out from a small alley, quickening their pace, looking in all directions for things that were not human. After walking a distance, Ta Lin brought 2 fingers to his temples, activating a spiritual communication spell, and softly called, Emperor Lord? Quan No replied, what is it, Xianlu? Have you arrived at the imperial city yet? Ta Lin said, we have arrived. I have something I wish to say to you. Quan No again asked, did blood rain-seeking flower do anything to you? Oh. Hoa Tan seemed to sense something, slightly furrowing his brows. Ta Lin said, no, he did not do anything to me. It is another matter, something I had no time to say during the recent crisis. He composed his expression, Emperor Lord, do you still have an impression of my master? Hearing him mention this person, Quan No seemed slightly surprised. After a moment said, are you referring to the former national master of Xianlu? Ta Lin said, that's right, you must have interacted with the national master quite a bit, haven't you? So, did you discover any strange points about the national master? The ritualistic ceremonies in Xianlu country were all handled by the national master. The national master was precisely the bridge between mortals and deities. Silent for a moment, Quan No replied, yes. Ta Lin held his breath, asked, what was strange about him? Xianlu, do you truly wish to hear? I do. Even if you will be disappointed after hearing. Ta Lin glanced at Hoa Tan, said, I do. After a long moment, Quan No slowly recounted that master of yours, in other words the national master of Xianlu, was truly a talent whose abilities were not fully utilized. His knowledge and capabilities far surpassed your imagination. Ta Lin listened quietly. The next sentence struck his heart, causing it to sink. Quan No continued, I believe that the existence of that national master, and the time he has lived in this world, are likely not inferior to mine, perhaps even greater. Oh. His speculation had been partially confirmed. If the true age of the national preceptor is older than Quan No, then the possibility that he is one of the 4 great guardians is even higher. Ta Lin could not help but say, then why have you never mentioned this matter before? Quan No replied, because for a very long period of time, I could not ascertain it. Ta Lin said, and how did you ascertain it afterwards? Quan No explained, after Tian Lac was destroyed. I sought him out and made a move against him. Looking back now, in the end he still escaped. Oh. To be able to escape from Quan No's hands, apart from Bok Vo Tuong, there were still a few other people. Ta Lin had always thought that the national preceptor escaped because of the war, chaos, never expecting that it was because Quan No had personally made a move. Ta Lin said, hey. Then why did you make a move against the national preceptor? And after you had ascertained it, you also did not tell me? These 2 questions of yours are in fact one single question. What? I have said, you might feel disappointed after hearing it. However, with you now, even if you feel disappointed towards others, you can still endure it. Ta Lin's heartbeat pounded more and more wildly. He could not help but tightly grasp Hoa Tan's hand. Hoa Tan also placed his other hand on the back of his hand. On the other side, Quan No said, because I discovered he seemed to want from your person to awaken something. Volume 5 Chapter 204. Ta Lin wondered. What thing? Quan No seemed to have some worries, hesitating for a long while, before finally saying, what is the matter, Tian Lac? Why suddenly bring up your master? Or did something happen to you in Donglo that is related to him? Ta Lin regained his composure, just about to briefly explain and then continue to question, when suddenly from the other side, a clamor was heard. Quan No then said, seeing everyone call them monster mountains, they truly are monstrous. I shall deal with them first, we can talk later about anything else. However, if Tian Lac is already suspicious, then you should remember one thing, well, your master is not a simple person. If you truly meet him again, You must be extremely careful. Having said that, the other side immediately fell silent. Ta Lin softly called out to Quan. Quan No did not reply anymore. Dealing with just one monster mountain was already difficult. Now being surrounded and attacked by all three made it even more troublesome, hindering his hands and feet. At present, the spiritual power within Ta Lin could not be used. He could no longer defy heaven to control the giant divine statue. Currently, for Quan No to handle it himself, it would likely also require quite some spiritual effort. After briefly recounting the conversation to Hoa Tan, the two of them also stopped their steps. At this very moment they were standing on a wide flat road. Looking up at the high sky, dark clouds obscured the moon vaguely. One could see something like black smoke drifting before the bright, cold moonlight, like the scene of clear water seeping into an ink pond. Those things were precisely the resentful spirits brought by Bok Vo Tuong through the Odung Then Dien. They had not yet entered, the reason being that within the imperial palace, the emperor's chi and the paths of the immortal shrines mingled, forming a majestic spiritual barrier. This invisible layer of barrier would block a large number of evil entities outside, and for that reason they could only wander high in the sky. Almost every city had a similar spiritual barrier, because formidable figures appeared everywhere, and powerful divine officials were worshipped, which was often referred to as a place of spiritual essence and outstanding talents. However, no matter what, they could not be permanently prevented from descending. Hoa Tan said it is enough just to reinforce this layer of barrier, but the problem lay in how to reinforce it. Ta Lin immediately set talismans, magical artifacts, then casually continued, I fear it won't be enough. In the sky, resentful spirits enveloped the entire imperial city, unless thousands upon thousands of talismans and magical artifacts could be found. Otherwise, it would certainly be impossible to withstand. Pacing back and forth, Ta Lin gritted his teeth, saying, Tam Lang, I have a method that can reinforce this layer of barrier, but I need people. Hua Chung asked immediately how many. Xie Lian replied, many. The more the better, at least about 500 people. Hua Chung continued, dead or alive. He listened attentively, completely not joking. Xie Lian said, living people. Ghosts also want do. What I need is the yang qi and vigor of living people, borrowing it to repel those resentful spirits. Hua Chung said, if that is the case, then they must also be voluntary. Xie Lian said, they must certainly be voluntary, Moreover, they need to possess the will to fight back and protect. If they harbor fear in their hearts or their will is insufficient, they might be exploited through a loophole and be invaded by them. Hua Chung gently stroked his chin like soldiers leading the charge to slay the enemy on the battlefield. They must possess the will to win, a profound belief. If they are coerced unwillingly or only desire to flee, completely lacking morale, they will absolutely certainly not be able to win, and will surely be utterly defeated, suffering a catastrophic failure. Xie Lian said, that is precisely the principle. San Lang, can you find them? Thinking for a moment, Hua Chung slowly said, Gage, if you want dead people, I can find any number for you. If you want living people who are not voluntary, that is also easy. But needing them to be voluntary, that is certainly not simple. Pausing for a moment, he continued, there are indeed quite a few people in the mortal realm who worship ghost kings, but I understand clearly, firstly, they are afraid of me, secondly, they have some desire, and for that reason they fear me and submit to me. I can coerce and entice with benefits, but this method, I'm afraid, cannot find the kind of people Gage needs. My apologies. Xie Lian listened entranced, then replied, you don't need to apologize. We just need to think of a way to search together. Hua Chung said, However, Gage, there is some good news. 50 steps ahead at the turn there is a group of living people. Xie Lian also sensed it, running up to see, just facing a crowd at the turn, who upon seeing him suddenly appear, cried out in fright, a ghost. Xie Lian composed himself and looked again, recognizing them as people. He happily replied, esteemed sirs, it's not a ghost, it's me. The group of monks, masters, Taoists, and the great majority of common mortals looked exceedingly familiar. Leading them was a Taoist in a floral robe. Wasn't that Tianyan Kai? Behind him stretched a long line, all people who had been incessantly entangled with the two of them before. Weren't they the group of mages who were pressed into unconsciousness by a black den? Who else could it be? Standing behind Xie Lian, Hua Chung clasped his hands and slowly stepped closer. He was currently no longer in the form of a child, nonchalant, imposing. He then revealed a terrifying smile, scaring Tianyan Kai so much he retreated 3 feet. You still say it's not a ghost? A ghost is a ghost. And it's a ghost king. Hua Chung collected his expression, unable to resist giving a word of praise, then was too lazy to even offer a single comment. Xie Lian was currently searching for people everywhere. Hastily raising his hand, esteemed sirs, you've arrived at just the right time. There's something? Who would have thought, just as he raised his hand, The reaction from the opposite side was several times more exaggerated than imagined. All of them simultaneously prostrated themselves on the ground. Callan. Ji out in extreme caution, beware of hidden weapons. Oh. Xie Lian pondered carefully for a while before recalling what hidden weapons were, then mused for a moment and said, everyone, there's no need to be afraid. I am not carrying any hidden weapons. How could Bingqing Yu Jiawan be so easily made? Even the skill of chopping vegetables required half a day of meticulous carving and grinding. He continued, moreover, last time you all forced us into such a situation, yet we didn't capture you, so there's even less need to now. Hearing that, everyone considered it, clearly taking heed of that matter, quickly scrambling up from the ground, patting off the dust clinging to their clothes, but still maintaining the same distance, not daring to loosen their Zen staffs, precious swords, and other spiritual artifacts. Tianyan Kai said, I say, this Taoist priest, long time no see. The ghostly aura on your person has become even more severe. I advise you to still turn back to the shore. Speaking of which, it's strange, why is it so heavy? I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm almost unable to see your face clearly anymore. Oh. Xie Lian, upon hearing this, truly wanted to blush, not daring to look at Hua Cheng. He interrupted him, let's discuss this later. Esteemed sirs, last night I observed the celestial phenomena and discovered an ill omen. Did you all see it or not? Tianyan Kai replied, of course we saw it. Observing celestial phenomena at night is our daily business. I once said the demons, monsters, and ghosts were up to some tricks. Could it be Hua Cheng? Lord? Xie Lian said, of course not. Otherwise, why would I warn you all? We also came because of those things, and are currently contemplating ways to reinforce the Imperial City's aura field. Tianyan Kai asked suspiciously, you all? Thinking of a solution? Ghost King would be so kind? Hua Cheng smiled, it is not kindness if I were to instead wish to do something within this Imperial City. That layer of spiritual barrier would fundamentally be unable to stop me. The expressions of the spiritual masters changed erratically. Xie Lian knew their defensive mindset could not be easily dispelled, and did not force the issue. I am extremely constrained dealing with the things up there. If they are allowed to break through the formation and enter the Imperial City, chaos will certainly ensue. Therefore, we currently need to find people to help set up a formation to withstand them, about 500 people. Tianyan Kai clicked his tongue, 500 people. What kind of formation are you setting up that requires so many people? How come I've never heard of it? Xie Lian also did not hesitate to say that 500 people was the minimum requirement in reality. If he were to state it, he feared it would be up to 800 people. A crowd of spiritual masters vied with each other, talking animatedly. I've never heard of it either. Has anyone seen it recorded in books? Are there such powerful things? I've only heard of demons eating 500 people, never a formation requiring so many. Is it dangerous? After careful consideration, Xie Lian honestly said, perhaps. Could be, it could not be. I am only 70 to 80% sure. Because I have never tried this formation before. Records of predecessors could also not be found because this formation was not something Xie Lian read from books or learned from someone. Rather, over 800 years, he had thought about it while traveling, wondering what to do if one day the human face disease epidemic broke out. Could he only sit and wait for death? That was how he came up with it. At that time he did not feel he would have to face the plague a second time unexpectedly. Now it had a purpose. On the other side, the group discussed for half a day. Finally Tianyan Kai turned around and carefully said, we cannot gather so many people. Furthermore, they did not trust Xie Lian and Hua Cheng. Nothing more could be done about this. After all, they fundamentally did not know what the human face disease was, or how dangerous it was. Moreover, Hua Cheng and they had previously incurred enmity, with him treating them like worms and mocking them countless times. Xie Lian had originally thought that these people were all spiritual masters. Surely they had sects and disciples, and perhaps combining everyone could yield 300 or 400 people, with the remainder to be found away. However, hearing the answer, it seemed hope had fallen into emptiness. Hua Cheng said, Gij does not need to waste words on them. Let us go. Xie Lian nodded, not discouraged, and followed him. But the group of Tianyan Kai had not left. Instead, they stealthily followed behind them, thinking themselves well hidden. Xie Lian said nothing, still thinking that the spiritual masters were trailing them out of fear that they might harm the Imperial City, which was rather kind of them, yet he also found it a little amusing, so he simply ignored it. At this moment, Hua Cheng suggested, why not go to the gatherings of the poor? There is no shortage of desperate and incredibly bold people there. Perhaps there will be some gain. Very soon after, the two turned towards the darker parts of the Imperial City. After walking for a while, they stopped in front of a dilapidated temple. Glancing inside, people lay strewn about, some even sleeping directly outside the temple. This was probably a group of vagrants or beggars. On a bitter winter day, each person wore tattered clothes, men, women, old and young alike, not disliking or avoiding each other. Some occupied torn mats, some hugged straw and hay for warmth, and some simply slept on the ground. They were not awakened by the pained groans of festering sores all over their bodies, but rather woke up to scratch at the itchy lice on them. There was also a limping figure dragging a crippled leg back and forth within the temple, seemingly going to bring bowls of water to the sick. Before a foot even crossed the temple threshold, a pungent, unpleasant odor wafted out, stifling one's breath. The most prosperous place and the dirtiest slum of that era were almost only a street apart. Comparing the two truly made people sigh with emotion. But at this moment, Xie Lian no longer had time for such sentiments. He stepped through the door, shouting, "Can you gentlemen help with something?" Before anyone could answer, someone first cursed, roaring, "Help your damn self. I still need someone to help me. Can you let people sleep or not? Scram, scram, scram." Xie Lian was not annoyed, saying, "It is a very urgent matter if you gentlemen agree to aid. Afterwards, it could create blessings for all living beings." He had wanted to say that after everything was settled, there would be generous rewards as thanks. Xie would naturally offer thanks. But if he began by saying it was for generous rewards as thanks, his intentions would surely not be pure. Immediately, the beggars in the temple cursed even more fiercely. "What does creating blessings for all living beings have to do with me?" Someone else asked. "Is there remuneration?" Xie Lian turned his head to look, a glint of displeasure flashing in Hua Cheng's eyes, seemingly contemplating some ruthless measure. He quickly pulled at him, whispering, "Not yet. San Lang already said that intimidation or temptation is not allowed. I say there are 70-80 people here, surely a few can be found." The ruthless glint in Hua Cheng's eyes then receded. Suddenly a hoarse, soft voice spoke up, "Hey, hey, hey! Everyone listen to me. Listen to me. Stop making noise. Let him speak a bit and see what the matter is." Xie Lian turned his head upon hearing this, only to see that the speaker was the limping beggar from earlier, also clad in tattered, messy clothes, gaunt and frail, his face unclear, but his voice sounded quite young. He waved his hand towards everyone in the temple to get their attention, though strangely using only one hand, making his posture a little peculiar. The beggars seemed to listen to him intently, their boisterous voices immediately weakening. Xie Lian said, "Many thanks." Without further ado, he turned his hand and conjured a flame, which flared high from his palm. The beggars were utterly startled. Those not awake had to be now, asking, "What kind of demonic art is this?" Xie Lian gravely replied, "It is not demonic art, but immortal art, merely to prove that I am not speaking falsely. Truly, I dare not conceal it. It is like this. Currently there are many demons, devils and monsters besieging the imperial city, and they will attack very soon. We now need 500 people to voluntarily join the formation to protect the imperial city. Does anyone agree? I also dare not conceal that there may be danger, but it is absolutely not compulsory. I only seek volunteers." Oh! Silence fell in the dilapidated temple for a moment. The beggars looked at each other, yet no a single person stood out to say, "I volunteer." After a while, one person sighed, "Protect the imperial city? Just forget about it." Xie Lian turned his head to look. That person stumbled and fell, muttering to himself, "The imperial city did not protect me either. Ha, what am I still protecting the imperial city for? How to protect it? What does it matter to me?" His tone was indifferent yet resentful. Xie Lian was not unable to comprehend it, however. Then it became difficult to handle. Evidently, those jostling within this temple were also as miserable as him, almost sharing the same thought. Moreover, there was no remuneration. How much good did living in the imperial city normally do them, that at this very moment they would go up to provide aid? Buried in the temple during the great winter cold, almost freezing to death, who would still want to go outside? Xie Lian tried one last effort. If those things invade the imperial city, a terrible plague will break out, and in the end everyone will have to bear the contagious disease. An old beggar lying on the ground spoke up, "A plague? Could it be as terrifying as my chronic aches and pains? If there really is a plague, then it is indeed worrisome. But even if we don't stay here, there's no good place anywhere else. Going anywhere is all the same. Then let's yield the opportunity to those great lords and young ladies to have their moment of glory. Anyone can go, why must it be us?" Xie Lian also had no way to explain clear. Or why? Those great lords and young ladies who loved face would also think the same way. If I don't go, naturally someone else will. Moreover, because in the imperial city they had family property and foundations, facing danger, the thought of being unwilling to give up would become even stronger. It's not to say that such thoughts were wrong or bad, it's just that, if everyone thought that way, nothing could ever be accomplished. After waiting a moment, no one came out. Xie Lian resolutely said, "All right. I have disturbed you." He turned and retreated from the ruined temple. Hua Cheng said, "Gij need not worry, on my side there are also people taking action. Once the news spreads, we can always find enough." Xie Lian nodded. He was not worried about not finding enough 500 people, but only worried that time would be insufficient, and forcing people to join would be counterproductive. Looking up at the sky, dark clouds had already packed in, making it impossible to see through. Just at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out from behind. Wait a moment. Wait a moment. I'll go. Hearing this, Xie Lian was stunned, unexpectedly turning his head back. He then saw that the owner of this voice was a lame beggar, who was hopping out of the temple door on his remaining leg. He asked, the people you're looking for just need to be alive, right? Damaged limbs aren't a problem, are they? It turned out that this person's movements were a bit peculiar because he was not only lame in one leg, but also had one arm severed, hanging limp and powerless. Seeing that someone had finally stepped forward voluntarily, Xie Lian's heart immediately warmed, and he quickly replied, absolutely no problem. That person also replied very easily, then good. Take me with you. Inside the temple, the group of beggars were alarmed. What do you want to do? Didn't you hear him say there's a possibility of encountering danger? That's right. Moreover, they're not even paying, talking for half a day without mentioning any remuneration. Don't rush into troubled waters, old Feng. Come back quickly. From the moment he stepped forward, Xie Lian had felt that this person was extremely familiar. But because his current appearance was too far from his memories, and his voice was also hoarse and faint, not very similar, he therefore couldn't recognize him. But after hearing someone outside blurt out the word Feng, he immediately came to a realization. Xie Lian gazed intently at that person, then suddenly and unexpectedly blurted out, Lord Windmaster? This beggar laughed heartily, reaching out a hand to brush aside his disheveled black hair, and replied, you've recognized me, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Beneath the dirty mass of black hair, a pair of sparkling eyes appeared, as bright and clear as ever. Su Tanhuin is a character I extremely liked from the start of the story, so the several incidents from Bai Thoai Chan Tian and the incident of his fan breaking and losing his spiritual power were enough to make me deeply heartbroken already. The climax was the several chapters on Heishu's Island. Then discovering Mingyi was Haxian. From the start of the story I had a good impression of the Windmaster, but it was too heartbreaking. Mother Cho's writing always has several terrifying unexpected secrets. Characters I liked from the start turn out to be the ones who cause terrible things, making it impossible to hate any character later. Heaven Official still has an even bigger surprise in store. Book 5 Chapter 205. Xie Lian was so shocked he couldn't speak. Su Tanhuin meanwhile scratched his hair and said, Aya ha 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 ha. Originally I still wanted to disguise myself as someone else, secretly observing you all, but I didn't expect your Royal Highness the Crown Prince's gaze to be truly sharp. There's no helping it, it must be because my demeanor is still the same, making it difficult for people to forget that it turned out this way. Ha 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 ha. Oh. Xie Lian held his shoulders with both hands, and said in a low voice, Lord Windmaster. Su Tanhuin stopped laughing ha ha ha, but still kept scratching his hair repeatedly, as if feeling many lice in his hair making him very itchy, and said, Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince, I am not the Windmaster. Xie Lian said, all right. Tanhuin. Pausing for a moment he then said, You? Why have you turned into such a state? Su Tanhuin said, Aya, this is a long story, difficult to finish. In short, it's just this and that, and then it became like this. At this moment, everyone in the temple exclaimed, What? Old Feng. You know these two people? Su Tanhuin turned around, put an arm around Xie Lian's shoulder, and vigorously patted him, saying, I know them. These are my good friends from before. What? They're your friends? Old Feng, why didn't you say so earlier? Old Feng, with your kind of character, you actually know the type of people who are obviously fair-skinned, tender-fleshed pretty boys who live in luxury. You're showing off again. The listeners were more surprised than scared, and it should have been amusing, but Xie Lian only felt an uncomfortable feeling in his heart. One must know, among the three of them, only the former Windmaster was the real deal, a fair-skinned, tender-fleshed pretty boy who lived in luxury. Su Tanhuin said angrily, So what? I wasn't boasting. Oh please, back then you were sick all day talking endlessly, did you think we all forgot? Su Tanhuin argued for a while, then inexplicably shouted loudly, saying, I currently want to go help my friends who are in trouble. Are there no more people coming? At this moment everyone looked at each other for a moment and said, all right, if it's Old Feng's friends, then it's not the same as before. Let's go with Old Feng lest he loses an arm or a leg and gets beaten to death by others. Su Tanhuin said, Hey. Someone else, not giving up, asked, Is it really true that there's no reward? Even if there's no reward, a few chicken drumsticks to gnaw on would be fine, wouldn't they? Xie Lian and Su Tanhuin exchanged a few brief words, and both parties understood their situation. Su Tanhuin thought for a moment, and said, This matter cannot be forced for me to understand, but can we get something to eat? Everyone hasn't had good food in a long time. As long as they weren't harboring greedy intentions, Xie Lian didn't mind and said that's possible. However, just as you said. After a few low-voiced words, Su Tanhuin said I think so too. Turning around, he spoke loudly, when this matter is done, well, treat everyone to chicken drumsticks and soup when we return. Everyone who comes or doesn't come will get a share. Pay attention, you don't need to go to get a share. Only if you volunteer. This proposition, surprisingly, was a clever plan. Everyone gets a share whether they come or not, they can still eat for those who still choose to come, that is truly precious. Su Tanhuin shouted, I still want more people to come. The more the better. Come, come, come. Tell them no money needed, just come and give me a hand, and incidentally save the common people around the imperial city or something like that, only if you volunteer. After it's done, I'll treat everyone to a good meal. Perhaps because someone was pulling people in an instant, the temple suddenly transformed from silent to boisterous, filled with an overwhelming aura. The Beggars Guild crowd divided themselves to inform more wanderers they knew. Xie Lian, Huacheng, Su Tanhuin, the three of them stood before the entrance of the dilapidated temple. Xie Lian looked up, seeing the space above where a signboard should have been but was empty. He couldn't help but recall the dilapidated Feng Shui temple in Bogu town from before, along with the headless Watermaster statue and the armless and legless Windmaster statue in the temple. Ultimately unable to restrain himself, he turned to Su Tanhuin and said uncertainly, Tanhuin. Su Tanhuin removed his hand from Xie Lian's shoulder and said, what is it? Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince, how inconvenient, my hands are a bit dirty, your clothes? Ha ha. Indeed, his arm left a dirty gray mark on the shoulder of Xie Lian's white Taoist robes, looking as if he wanted to help Xie Lian brush off dust, but at that moment it could only make it dirtier with each pat, so he retracted his hand, awkwardly rubbing his nose bridge. How could Xie Lian care about these things? He was currently only very worried about one matter, asking Feng Qingxian, your fate. Sure, Qingxian was stunned. What about my fate? Xie Lian said, could it be that He Shui still changed it? Sure, Qingxian then suddenly realized and hurriedly said, no, there isn't. You've misunderstood, he didn't do anything. Xie Lian had originally also felt that He Shui would ultimately not go so far as to change Sure Qingchuan's fate, and said, then what exactly happened to your limbs? Sure, Qingxian scratched his head again, and bashfully said this also wasn't because of him. How should I put this? It was completely unintentional, and also extremely unlucky. Actually, I caused it all myself. He also didn't elaborate, and Xie Lian didn't press further. It was just that, in his confusion, Sure Qingchuan's current state still corresponded to He Xian's previous act of venting his anger in the Wind Master's temple. He didn't know what kind of mystery it was. Xie Lian said, that day my spiritual power was suddenly drained, and I couldn't help you, I am truly sorry. Sure Qingxian waved his hand and said, it was never your business. If it weren't for your highness the crown prince telling me what had happened back then, I probably would have remained foolishly ignorant until the very end. Xie Lian said, what exactly happened after that day? As it turned out, after He Xian beheaded Sure Wudu, Sure Qingxian was stunned blank. He couldn't understand anything He Xian said. Only vaguely remembered He Xian taking him out of He Shui Island. After that, he was thrown into the imperial city. He didn't know why it was the imperial city, but Sure Qingxian used to make a fuss about wanting to go to the imperial city to drink wine, have tea and hold banquets, so he considered this place familiar. After a period of dull stupor and confusion, after thoroughly sobering up, he decisively concealed his name and traces and resided there. Because he was completely without spiritual power, had no identity to be recognized by, and moreover, spent his days mingling in dirty corners he had never set foot in before, the upper court naturally could not trace his whereabouts. Sure Qingxian said, in short, this matter has nothing to do with him. After that I never saw him again. Not meeting was also very good. This matter was truly difficult to handle. Such a person, should he ultimately be killed or not? Moreover, at the critical moment, the Watermaster had mercilessly choked Sure Qingxian, which truly disgusted He Xian and made Xie Lian break out in a cold sweat. Right at this moment the beggars brought people back, dragging them in a disorderly fashion, shouting, old Feng, we've brought you so many people, how's this? Sure Qingxian raised a thumb and said, good. Everyone gets a chicken drumstick. So many people, will there be enough to eat? Sure Qingxian waved his hand. At that moment, Xie Lian almost seemed to see again the image of him scattering 10,000 merits from before, yet only heard him say, what is this? Don't even mention this, many people, even 10 times more, could eat. Not easily recovering his wits, he glanced around and saw that somehow over 200 people had gathered. This greatly exceeded Xie Lian's imagination. He happily said, Windmaster, great. Qingxian, truly high efficiency. Sure Qingxian said with overflowing pride, that's Nat. Ural, wherever I am always met with widespread response later. I might even conveniently establish a sect or something and become its chief, ha 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 ha. The beggars behind him all said Old Feng is acting up again. No, he's boasting again. Shi Qingxian said what? I'm truly not boasting. A few beggars insisted on refuting his words, and said to Xie Lian, this friend, you wouldn't know when Old Feng first arrived. He was very mad. All day long he would mysteriously boast to others that he was an immortal. A look of awkwardness appeared on Shi Qingchuan's face, and he immediately said in a loud voice, no time to listen to your nonsense. Shut your mouths and gnaw on your chicken drumsticks. Xie Lian, listening, his slight smile faded. His heart felt as if it had been tightly squeezed into a ball, and now slowly unfolded, flat as a sheet of paper. Lord Windmaster changed, yet did not change. That's wonderful. Su Qingxian said, Crown Prince Highness, what should we do next? The people have been found, I entrust them to you all. Although the number of people was not enough, for now first we must devise a way to encircle them and form a formation. Xie Lian said, good. Next we must quickly find an open space that can accommodate so many people. Just now, while they were conversing, Hua Cheng had not interjected from beginning to end, seemingly lost in thought, and only then did he speak, it's easy. Gitch, follow me. Xie Lian nodded. Su Qingxian on one side ped clumsily with a crutch, while on the other he turned his head back and called out vigorously, everyone follow along, don't get lost. Xie Lian had instinctively wanted to go assist him, but seeing that no one else went to help, and that he was not too slow compared to others, he then understood. A chaotic throng of beggars noisily emerged from the slum, rushing onto the main road. After only a few steps, they suddenly heard a loud shout, stop. What are you doing? So many of you gathering together in the dead of night, are you trying to cause trouble? The beggars, startled, cried out in alarm, oh no, it's the patrol soldiers. Xie Lian, however, did not even turn his head, because Hua Cheng also did not turn his head back, saying, no need to mind them. Before his words had finished, that soldier immediately fell down. The crowd of beggars was utterly amazed, speaking in a hubbub of voices. Su Qingxian said, quiet. Don't attract more soldiers. Immediately, everyone's voices quieted down again. Hua Cheng stopped his steps and said, Gidge, it's this road. Xie Lian said, this? Indeed, from a positional perspective it is the most suitable, but might it attract too much attention from others? This grand thoroughfare was exceedingly spacious. Every few steps, there was a shop fronting it. It was the main road of the imperial city, naturally attracting extreme attention from others. Everyone said, that's right. If by any chance people discover us and drive us away, it would be dangerous. Hua Cheng, however, said, it's nothing. Even if they discover us, they won't be able to drive us away. Xie Lian nodded and said, everyone, I must make it clear next. The thing we are about to face is extraordinarily perilous, and you may encounter great danger. And once it breaks in, the entire imperial city will fall into peril. Therefore, it is necessary to ensure that each person is here voluntarily, with unwavering resolve. Is there anyone who feels afraid and wishes to retreat? No one. Xie Lian said, good, then now, please everyone connect one person to the next, holding hands to form a circle. Someone said suspiciously, what kind of formation is this? Why does it sound like a few children holding hands? Su Qingxian snorted and said, what's the point of so much nonsense? Just do as you're told. Old Wind, your words are not right. You should know, no one would bother wasting words with you. After some bickering, everyone did as they were told. More than 200 people, hand in hand, formed a very, very large circle upon the wide and flat main road of the imperial city. Su Qingxian said, if we hold hands like this, those things won't rush into the imperial city, will they? Xie Lian said, no. They will rush down sooner or later. Su Qingxian said, flustered. Then what is this formation of yours for? Xie Lian said, it is a trap. After this formation is established, those things that break through the protective barrier of the imperial city and rush down will not scatter in all directions, but will all be drawn into this circle, falling into the trap. Shi Qingxian said, then after they fall into the trap, what should we do? Xie Lian stood with Hua Cheng in the middle of the formation, replied, once that is done, hand them over to us, we will slowly deal with them inside the formation, not letting even one slip through. All that is needed is time. The urgent matter at present is to prevent them from spreading. Anything we do now is dangerous, as the number of people is not yet 500, making it very hard to say if we can truly trap them. Someone swallowed a mouthful of saliva, asking, then what if we rush out? Xie Lian answered him, it will be very bad, you will be clung to by resentful spirits, and then contract the plague. What I mean is, for example, if someone abandons their post and flees, then what will happen? The circle will be broken, and you could also be afflicted by resentful spirits. But the result is the same. Someone quite intelligent hearing this immediately understood and explained it's not the same. The former means you will absolutely contract the plague, but the latter is only a possibility. To be more precise, if you abandon your post and flee, there is still a chance of survival. Xie Lian nodded. That is indeed true. Is there anyone else who wishes to leave now? Once it has officially begun, absolutely no one can withdraw. It would be better while the formation has not yet been activated. Anyone who leaves now will have no problem. I also hope that those who stay will not hold them back, for this is truly a very dangerous matter. These words absolutely had to be told to them, otherwise it would not be able to filter out those with true resolve. A moment later, sure enough, several dozen people gradually left, bowing their heads and hastily departing, and the circle subsequently narrowed a little. Xie Lian sighed in relief. This is excellent. Sure, Qingxian, what's so good about this? The number of people has decreased. Xie Lian happily smiled. This is far better than I imagined. Even more people have stayed. Earlier, he had been pondering and worrying about what to do if half of them left. Unexpectedly, only a dozen or so people had departed, which was truly delightful. Just at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out from afar. Wait a minute. Don't you know their identities? Don't trust so easily. Be careful not to be harmed by others. Xie Lian turned his head to look. It turned out to be the group of Tianyan Kai. Sure, Qingxian immediately exclaimed. Then who are you lot? If you're not helping, then just stand still to one side. Don't make more trouble. I guarantee they absolutely will not harm anyone. Those spellcasters, naturally, did not even bother to acknowledge a ragged beggar, and retorted, then who are you? How many copper coins is your word worth? Hearing such a question, Shi Qingxian immediately became so angry he had no place to vent, pointing at his nose and shouting, What? You dare to discuss matters of money in front of me? You are truly a group of people who don't know the vastness of the world. You might even have to kneel before this humble one. Cough cough. As he said this, he suddenly coughed twice and hastily recoiled. Those spellcasters merely thought he was bragging and couldn't follow through, so he backed down on his own. They no longer paid him any mind, instead admonishing, You fundamentally don't know what they intend to do. Be careful not to lose even your lives for a few bits of food. Xie Lian was about to explain that these beggars' assistance primarily stem from a sense of righteousness, not merely a few bits of food, when Hua Chang, standing from afar, already opened his mouth first. Ah no. They are not here for a few bits of food, but to save all sentient beings. Xie Lian felt a bit strange. Why would Hua Chang say that? Suddenly he heard a contemptuous scoff from the opposite side. Saving all sentient beings? What sort of nonsense is that? Go protect your own lives well. Yes, that's right. Beggars should also hurry back home. Don't gather and cause trouble. Hua Chang leisurely and unhurriedly replied. Oh? Meaning beggars cannot save all sentient beings, is that it? Or rather, they are not yet worthy? As soon as the words were spoken, the crowd of beggars became agitated and chaotic, expressing considerable dissatisfaction. Tianyan Kai hastily shouted, We did not say that. Shi Qingxian immediately leapt out and pointed at him. Still denying, are you? If those words of yours just now didn't mean this, then what did they mean? The tone sounded utterly disdainful, didn't it, everyone? That's right. What do you mean by that? In what way are we unworthy? Even if we act or not, we still get to eat. Do you truly think we only came for a few bits of food? You truly look down on others too much. Xie Lian turned to one side, seeing Hua Chang raising an eyebrow at him, as if saying easy as pie, and secretly thought so that's what happened. Although quite a few people remained, it wasn't certain they possessed firm resolve. Just at the opportune moment, the group of Tianyan Kai appeared, unintentionally displaying an attitude of looking down upon them, thinking, You ragged beggars, what are you doing watching the commotion? Unexpectedly, Hua Chang seized their weak point, exaggerated it to provoke the anger of these beggars. All of them shared the thought, You feel we are unworthy? Then we will all the more want to prove to you that we can. Just like that, morale like a wave surged. Both sides argued amongst themselves. Xie Lian looked at the Tianyan Kai people and said, If you are truly uneasy, then just stay here and supervise. Should we do anything to harm people, your intervention would be no problem. Hua Chang nearby smiled and interjected, however, it would be best not to cause any hindrance, Oh. The spellmasters who had been clinging to Xie Lian and Hua Chang throughout the long journey had now truly run out of patience. Gathering all their courage, they stepped forward, but not long after, they were once again scared back by Hua Chang's enigmatic smile. Hua Chang turned his face and said, Gidge, look at the sky. Xie Lian looked up with him. The dark shadows against the full moon became increasingly distinct, seeming to have drawn a little closer. They didn't know how long it had taken them to find people. Those things were also about to descend. Xie Lian's heart tightened. Oh no, there wasn't enough time to find more people. But he did not let it show on his face, immediately saying, "Everyone stop. Clasp hands tightly." Shi Qingxian had long since stood at attention. "Your Royal Highness, old Xia, we only have so few people, will it hold?" Since they were, after all, in the mortal realm, addressing him formally would cause misunderstandings and unnecessary complications. Xie Lian said, "I will stand here and inspect any place that is torn. I will reinforce. Only in this way can it endure for long. Or to put it more simply, to patch up the rips." Shi Qingxian said, this then our lives are in your hands, even mine, your Royal Highness. Old Xia, you must strive, you absolutely must strive. I am human now. Alright, old Feng, I will definitely strive. Everyone's palms were drenched in sweat, their faces taut with extreme tension. An instant after, everyone's hands clasped tightly together. From the gloomy, silent night, countless piteous cries suddenly rang out, drawing closer and closer, faster and faster. "They're falling." Seizing the opportune moment, Xie Lian called out, "Everyone, blow your breath forward." No one understood why, but everyone still obeyed. Their jaws jutted forward as they blew with all their might. Foo. In the winter night, a group of people exhaled dense white misty breath. Although they didn't know how far it could spread, this warm breath, imbued with yang energy, already possessed an extreme allure. Furthermore, in the darkness, Hua Chang used a trick to obscure their sight. They couldn't clearly see what was happening below. The surrounding race only felt that somewhere there was a very dense human aura and warm energy, constantly rippling, exceedingly lively. They would obviously attack that area. So they excitedly surged forward, converging into a sky-high pillar. In a flash, Xie Lian nearly perceived the enveloping black smoke. He said, "Everyone, be careful not to let go. They've entered the trap." At the same time, Hua Chang from behind released countless silver butterflies. A profound silver light emerged, and the black smoke before Xie Lian's eyes was quickly dispersed. He saw Hua Chang extending a hand to him. "Gidge, come here to my side." Xie Lian was startled, then immediately grasped his hand tightly. Hua Chang gently pulled him closer, his hand at Xie Lian's waist, sweeping all around without a flicker of expression. Although He's resentful spirits had been trapped in Tonglu for 2,000 years, long accustomed to the murky darkness, they still dared not approach, because within the heart of that circle, there wasn't even a wisp of dark energy. After a while of wild enthusiasm, the resentful spirits only then realized something was amiss. They had been gnawing and tearing for half a day, yet why couldn't they sink their teeth into a single living person, but instead bit their own kind? Moreover, there were also several things that were not human forms. As for the silver butterflies, to them, they were like a wind of arrows and a rain of blades, beating their wings and swooping, shrieking as they surged straight into the sky to kill them. The resentful spirits finally realized they were ensnared. They were caught in a searing beast's cage, and these more than 200 people were clearly not regular sightseers outside a cage, but rather an iron cage with handles. Upon realizing this, the resentful spirits became uncontrollably furious, frantically pounding against the blocking hands of the beggars. Their sinister faces shrieked, mouths wide enough to swallow a human head whole, as they furiously flew upwards, their faces and bodies twisted beyond recognition. A few people were so scared they retreated a few steps, but were swiftly pulled back by the person next to them. "Don't panic." Xie Lian also reminded, "Don't move. As long as the formation isn't torn, they cannot harm you." Upon hearing this, everyone felt slightly relieved. There was also a beggar who turned his face towards the resentful spirits and shrieked, spitting saliva like crazy, his mouth bellowing, puffed, "You filthy rotten thing, you filthy rotten thing." Scram. He had probably heard before that ghosts were afraid of dirty things, which was why he acted this way. Xie Lian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This is not necessary. They aren't scared, you know. At this moment, he suddenly noticed a spot in the formation fraught with peril, on the verge of ripping. He quickly looked up and over, and saw a small thin beggar with wide staring eyes, breathing rapidly, as if so nervous he was almost convulsing. Many resentful spirits also sensed this person's feeble presence, and jostled to rush towards him. Xie Lian unleashed a thin silk ribbon, striking the resentful spirits in that direction and scattering them, then quickly had that person retreat so that the two people next to him could rejoin. Before he could even take a breath, 6 zhang to the southwest, a new breach appeared. Xie Lian was about to turn around when he then discovered a third breach appearing in a very distant spot. It was a person standing right next to Shi Qingxian. After all, the number of resentful spirits was simply too enormous. This was only the first wave, there were still many more behind, rolling endlessly. Before he could run over, Talian called, "San Lang." Hua Chang, however, did not move, only replying, "Gij do not worry." Ta Lian did not believe he could not sense it, nor did he believe he would abandon it if there was a flaw here. It would certainly be breached by those resentful spirits rushing in. At a moment of critical peril, a golden talisman suddenly flew over, exploding next to Shi Xian. This talisman, although it could not blast to death the group of resentful spirits, also scared them into shrinking back, drawing in their necks and retreating. The group of cultivators standing on the side, having spied for half a day, suddenly rushed over, cheering, "We told you, if you don't join the excitement, then so be it, but once united, then do it thoroughly. If it's broken, won't it just add more trouble?" Hua Cheng said to Ta Lian, "You see, I said do not worry." He was forever calm and unhurried. Ta Lian felt somewhat at ease. Tianyan Kai and the group of cultivators ultimately still could not restrain themselves and personally rushed forward. That group of people truly lived up to the name veterans. Every single movement was extremely fluid, with two people grasping hands tightly, separating and reconnecting. The more than 10 newcomers immediately merged into the circle, expanding the human formation. Tianyan Kai raised his voice clear and high, "Esteemed fellow Taoists, hurry, if there are sect disciples in the Imperial City, quickly call them over. Let's go now. I will call my disciples over." In just a moment, at the end of the street, another 100 people appeared. These more than 100 people were also not useless. All were monks, Taoists, and sorcerers. Each person was fully armed, taking 2 steps in one stride, with heroic stances. Upon seeing them, Ta Lian inwardly praised them greatly, while the beggars gaped in astonishment. The wave of newcomers, seeing the sky-high demonic aura, all displayed expressions of stunned disbelief and immediately quickly joined. After they merged in, the circle grew considerably larger, almost as wide as a main street in the Imperial City. Furthermore, their courage was beyond question. On each person were carried several chaotic magical artifacts. There was no doubt this great formation would certainly be able to prolong the time. By this point, Ta Lian's heart already held 9 parts of certainty, and he said firmly, "Everyone need not fear. Currently the situation has reversed. The number of people is growing more and more. As long as we firmly protect the formation, annihilating them is only a matter of time." Everyone also saw that the situation had become advantageous. With hope, their voices grew stronger instantly. All were 100 times more confident, loudly replying, "Annihilate them." On the other side, Tianyan Kai said, "On our side, there are 168 people. How many do you have? How long can you maintain it?" The leader of the beggar's side, Shi Xian, had also counted repeatedly many times and loudly replied, "On our side, remaining within the formation, there are 148 people." Ta Lian said, "Then combined there are also 316 people, only still needing to find." Hua Cheng suddenly interrupted, "Not right?" Ta Lian turned his head back, puzzled. "What's not right?" Hua Cheng withdrew his gaze, turning his face to look intently at him. "The number is not right. Currently there are 317 people here." "Oh." Although Hua Cheng only glanced over, Ta Lian believed he would not miscount. He said in a low voice, "Except for Xie Lian, no one else could hear." Xie Lian quickly scanned his surroundings. Everyone here was holding hands, but when exactly had there been one person more? "Is it that Shi Xian and the others counted wrong?" Xie Lian said, "Are you all certain that there are so many people? Didn't you miss anyone counting?" Shi Xian confidently replied, "No. Didn't you say the number of people was very important? Because of that, I counted over and over many times and recounted on the way precisely 148 people. What's wrong? Is there something not right?" For now, it was temporarily inconvenient to explain clearly. To casually reveal it would only cause useless panic. Nor could they let everyone here confirm with each other who among them they didn't know. After all, there were too many people, and they originally didn't know everyone. Immediately after that, Xie Lian shook his head. "Nothing, just confirming." The sorcerers on that side were even Lu SS likely to have counted wrong. They were all sects who themselves declared the number of people for Tianyan Kai to tally up. Could everyone still not be clear how many disciples they sent? Xie Lian said in a low voice, "Why at this time would someone infiltrate here? What does he want to do?" Hua Cheng said, "Either right from the beginning he already infiltrated here, or he infiltrated along with the sorcerers at the same time. Moreover, he is definitely human. At the very least, he is not a ghost. To form this circle, necessarily all must be living people, otherwise, it would fundamentally be impossible to attract and hold these vengeful spirits. Moreover, this person seemed to temporarily not want to be exposed. Because if he had infiltrated this circle, if only he alone suddenly let go, a hole would appear, the formation would break, and the entire group would be annihilated. But until now, the circle was still stable, showing that he was still perfectly well here, playing the role of a bar. In that case, they could even less afford to act rashly. If that person knew his own existence had been discovered, no one would know if he might turn around and run away or not. In other words, currently, under the situation where they didn't want to be detected, they had to find the person, or capture the person without needing to break the formation. This was truly very difficult. However, just a moment later, Xie Lian already had a method. He said, "Sanlang, can your spiritual butterflies only chase and not kill these vengeful spirits? I plan to ask you to control them to drive away the vengeful spirits. Do you agree?" Hua Cheng immediately understood what he wanted to do. Yes. If this person proactively joined, then it meant he was definitely not a simple character, completely unafraid of those vengeful spirits. In that case, thinking in reverse, if Hua Cheng controlled the spiritual butterflies to force the vengeful spirits outwards from the circle, they would naturally be driven away in disarray, wanting to use the opportunity to flee. Almost every mortal person could become a whole, only one person would not. It was that person who proactively joined. Xie Lian said, however, this method is very dangerous if not careful. It will scare the other people into letting go. In that case, it would be like lifting a rock only to drop it on one's own foot. Hua Cheng then said, "Don't worry, before that I will kill the vengeful spirits." The two people calculated together. Xie Lian suddenly spoke up, "Everyone be careful." The vengeful spirits suddenly became stronger. "Hold hands tightly, no need to fear." Tian Yen Kai, what? Why would they suddenly become stronger when all was peaceful? Hua Cheng remained still in place, while the spiritual butterflies chased those dirty, wicked vengeful spirits within the circle, causing them to madly jump in disarray. Other people did not see very clearly, but those sorcerers and mages could discern some clues. "Tian Wai!" And Kai angrily shouted, "Hua Cheng, what are you trying to do?" The two people within the circle basically paid no attention to them, only concentrating their minds on observing. Sure enough, amidst the black air currents scattered across the sky, there was one person whom the vengeful spirits fundamentally dared not approach. Thus, in front of him, a section suddenly cleared out. It was him. Xie Lian suddenly stepped forward in one swift move. He grabbed that person's two hands, and at the same time taking the left and right hands of the two people standing next to him, connecting them, separating this person from the circle. Tian Yen Kai and the others were still continuously causing a commotion. "What's happening?" Hua Cheng replied impolitely, "It's not your business." Before he finished speaking, he swiftly moved to Xie Lian's side, to prevent that person from suddenly causing trouble. Xie Lian steadily restrained that person, turning him around. The moment they faced each other, Xie Lian reluctantly swallowed down the word "who" that had originally risen to the tip of his tongue, his eyes wide open. Looking at that face, he murmured, "National Preceptor, it truly is you." That person also fell silent, only then softly replying a moment later, "Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince." This face, which should have been extremely familiar, was instead utterly strange. The National Preceptor in his impression was originally over 30 years old, with a calm and steady disposition. Tian wearing a cloak, his hair tied high, quite intimidating. But now, the person before him looked to be only 25 or 26, not much older than him. Even when he had heard this voice in the strange mountains of Mount Tonglu, Xie Lian had not afterwards considered carefully whether or not he had misheard. Even Jun Wu had told him that this person's master was not simple, advising him to be extremely careful, and he had truly thought, perhaps the Heavenly Emperor had misjudged. However, this person before his eyes was undoubtedly his master, the last Grand National Preceptor of Xianle Kingdom, Mei Nianqing. The three people, together with more than 300 people, formed an opposing formation against each other, and the air gradually seemed to stagnate. And Mei Nianqing's reaction the next moment was to do something no one could have imagined. Taking advantage of Xie Lian's shock, he suddenly counterattacked, lunging forward, his two hands grasping his throat. But Hua Cheng stood right beside him. How could he allow him to succeed in his intention? He didn't even use his hands, and Mei Nianqing's body immediately flew outwards, falling several zhang away. A sudden anomaly occurred, and everyone holding hands jumped in shock. Why are they fighting? What are they doing? Who are they fighting? Hua Cheng worried. "Gidge, are you alright?" Xie Lian, "I'm fine." In reality, the National Preceptor looked to be the one truly in trouble. Mei Nianqing fell down, vomiting a mouthful of blood, then stumbled to his feet, intending to flee towards the outer edge of the group. Shi Qingxian saw him rush over, and anxiously cried out, "What are you trying to do? I warn you not to come closer. Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince, he wants to break this circle." Xie Lian shouted, "Bring him back." Ruyi obeyed the command and flew out. But before it could entangle Mei Nianqing, a sword fell from the sky, blocking in front of the National Preceptor, obstructing his path. Immediately afterwards, a white light appeared in the sky, and several rays of light poured down. From within the light, a martial god in white armor descended from the sky, sealing off his retreat path. Both front and back were blocked, and Meng Yanqing had nowhere left to hide. As he intended to turn around, he was met by Ruyi, who was jumping around in frantic delight, and with several swoosh 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 turns, it immediately tied him up tightly, causing him to fall to the ground. Xie Lian stepped forward. Heavenly Emperor? Why have you personally come here? Junwu stood up, his expression extremely solemn. Mount Tonglu over there is temporarily stable. I came to see how the situation is on your side. Xie Lian was surprised. How were you able to stabilize it? Junwu replied quickly. I established a new barrier, temporarily encircling and restraining those 3 mountains and the non-human entities. What Xie Lian cared about most was not the strange mountains and the not-so-important minor demons, so he spoke up. Then what about the white-clothed calamity? Junwu slowly shook his head. He was not seen in Mount Tonglu. I fear he has long since fled to another place. Xie Lian looked around a bit. A dazzling screen of light suddenly appeared, surrounding them, separating them from the more than 300 people outside who were holding hands. Now, from outside the light, those people could not see what was happening inside. He then looked at the ground, saw the national preceptor stirring, and caught sight of Junwu's face. Probably remembering the fierce battle from before, his expression was both angry and fearful, but he was very sensible and said nothing. Junwu also slightly bowed his head, looking down at him from above, and slowly greeted, Xianlu National Preceptor, long time no see. Hua Chong sauntered over calmly, glanced and said, this National Preceptor looks like he can't even tie a chicken. Why was he able to escape initially? Junwu said he did not rely on his own ability to escape at that time. He had 3 people helping him by his side. They were the 3 other National Preceptors of Xianlu. Hearing this, Xie Lian truly couldn't restrain himself, and asked, National Preceptor, who exactly are you? Meng Yanqing grimly looked at Junwu. His hands clenched tightly, blue veins protruding on the back of his hands. It was unclear if he hated him for disrupting his own plans, or for exposing his identity in front of Xie Lian. A moment later, he only then replied in a low voice, haven't you already guessed, Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince? One of the 4 guardians of Wu Yong Crown Prince. Xie Lian said, Wu Yong Crown Prince? Isn't he precisely the white-clothed calamity? Hearing this, even Junwu was taken aback. Xianlu, who is Crown Prince Wu Yong? Xie Lian only now remembered that he had not yet had time to tell Junwu about the Wu Yong kingdom. Having finally captured the National Preceptor, Xie Lian had many matters he wished to discuss, and many questions he wished to ask, but this place was not convenient for handling them, so he casually replied, Emperor, let's discuss this upon our return to the heavenly court. Junwu did not ask further, all right? He hesitated for a moment, then said, however, most of the vengeful spirits in Mount Tonglu have all been trampled into the imperial city and cannot be suppressed in a short while. Even I would need 7 days and 7 nights before I can completely purify them. Does this mean we need to wait 7 days before we can interrogate the National Preceptor? That would be too late. Currently, the whereabouts of Bai Wuxiang are still unclear. Xie Lian was pondering what he should do when he heard Hua Chong beside him say, Leave this place to me. You may go. Xie Lian turned his head to look at him. Hua Chong had long since guessed what he was thinking and said, no need to say anything else. I will wait for you here. Gage if you tr. Yuli wished to thank me, then quickly come down here to find me. Junwu asked him, is that all right? Xie Lian curved his lips into a smile, it's possible. At this moment, suddenly a figure flickered within the screen of light. Someone rushed in from outside, limping and staggering, hopping and skipping, shouting loudly, Crown Prince Highness. Crown Prince Highness, what are you doing inside? Are you all right? It was Shi Xian. This was also due to the fact that when Junwu descended to the mortal realm, he had casually conjured a screen of light, not allowing people to see, causing those outside also not to know what was happening, scaring others almost to death. Shi Xian volunteered to rush over to see what exactly was happening. If it were others, they might have been blocked, but he had previously been a divine official, and this screen of light recognized him, so it allowed him to enter. As soon as he entered, he was stunned. Emperor? Why did your excellency descend to the mortal realm yourself? Junwu saw him and smiled slightly. Lord Windmaster, how have you been? Oh. Shi Xian was a little embarrassed. After all, he couldn't possibly not know that Shi Wudu had defied fate for his own younger brother, and after this matter was exposed, it would certainly cause a great uproar throughout the heavens. Meeting his superior again at this moment, apart from embarrassment and a guilty conscience, he truly dared not think of anything else. Unwu did not criticize or reprimand him, still being very courteous, showing him respect. Xie Lian retracted Ruyi. And Mei Nianqing slowly stood up by himself. After Shi Qingxian finished being embarrassed, he asked suspiciously, "Who is this person? What is the current situation?" Mei Nianqing glanced at him and suddenly said, "You are Shi Qingxian?" Shi Qingxian was taken aback. "Who are you? How do you know my name? Most importantly, how could you see him in this state and still recognize him?" Mei Nianqing scoffed in reply, "This name of yours is truly not a good one." Shi Qingxian understood nothing at all. "Huh?" Mei Nianqing did not say anything else and consciously caught up with Jun Wu, looking truly very obedient, likely knowing that currently there was no one beside him to help. Although not bound, he also couldn't possibly escape from Jun Wu's grasp. Jun Wu said, "Xianlu, I will take him away first. You wait for a moment and I will return." Xie Lian understood. Jun Wu nodded at him. Waiting for those two to leave, Xie Lian turned towards Hua Cheng. Before he could speak, Hua Cheng had already opened his mouth first. "Gidge, no need to worry. It's merely protecting this circle, just to keep them from encountering trouble. It won't take much effort." Shi Qingxian also said, "Crown Prince Highness, do you want to go up? Go. I will also keep watch for you, just rest assured." Xie Lian nodded. "You too must be tired." If in the past Hua Cheng would surtai, and Ly reply with something like "It's nothing," who knew this time he actually folded his arms and sighed, "Oh, how troublesome." Oh. Xie Lian always felt he was implying something. Shi Qingxian, however, was completely unaware and added with great excitement, "That's right. When you return, remember to treat us to a meal, that would be good. I suggest we hold a banquet at the best restaurant in the Imperial City, how about it?" Ha 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 ha. He still remembered, never forgetting the matter of wanting to hold a banquet at the best inn in the Imperial City. Xie Lian secretly thought, "Windmaster Lord, don't speak anymore, he fundamentally doesn't think like you." Hua Cheng shook his head, casually playing with the pink coral pearl in his braid, frowned and spoke as if lightly, "If Gidge were by my side, that would be good. Thinking of Gidge wanting to ascend to the upper heavenly court again, leaving me alone below TSK, I feel even more distressed." Shi Qingxian finally felt a little strange but couldn't think it through no matter how much they tried, so they put on a bright smiling face. "Crimson rain sought flower. When you say it like that, I hear it and even think you are saying His Royal Highness the Crown Prince must go to the heavenly court to make you lonely. Why does it sound like a newlywed's words, ha ha." Oh. Xie Lian secretly thought, "You didn't think wrong. Ah, isn't his meaning like this?" Shi Qingxian smiled awkwardly for a long while. Xie Lian really couldn't bear it, lightly coughed once, then said, "Windmaster Lord, you go outside first, can you go outside for a moment?" Shi Qingxian? "Why?" Xie Lian had no way to explain, said, You just go outside first, that's fine. We are only saying our greetings." Shi Qingxian then, puzzled, went outside. Inside the screen of light there were only the two of them, there was no third person. Xie Lian turned around. Hua Cheng raised one eyebrow, looking at him, as if waiting for him to say something or do something. After that, Xie Lian closed his eyes, placed his two stiff hands on Hua Cheng's shoulders, calmed for a moment, then suddenly moved closer and kissed his cheek once. After finishing the kiss, he startled, turning his head to look back, confirmed there was no one. Only then did he feel at ease. Who knew, the next moment his waist was tightly embraced. It turned out Hua Cheng was hugging him. "Gidge, are you sure you're not trying to deceive me?" In his voice was a hint of half-truth, half-feigned dissatisfaction. Xie Lian was startled, quickly replied, "No." Hua Cheng said, "Really? The time you came to me to borrow spiritual power, wasn't it like that? Could it be that without borrowing spiritual power, I would only receive such words of farewell?" Oh. Thinking like this, Xie Lian felt it seemed very insincere. A moment later he whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that." After apologizing, he truly thought about it more and more. And it seemed that indeed was his intention. The alarm bells in his heart rang fiercely. Not waiting for Hua Cheng's reply without another word, he did it himself, jumping up and embracing Hua Cheng's neck, then suddenly leaning in. This time he accurately kissed the spot Hua Cheng desired. No one anticipated, not yet seeing the coffin, not yet shedding tears. Shi Qingchuan's voice suddenly transmitted, "Your Royal Highness, no matter how I think about it, I still feel strange. You don't need to chase me away just to say your greetings, do you?" "But Your Royal Highness?" Leaving so quickly, Xie Lian continuously fled for his life. Should I re-upload the rest of Volume 5 or make up for Volumes 2 and 3 first? Volume 5 Chapter 208. Having run to Xianjing, Xie Lian still hadn't stopped covering his mouth with his hand, tottering and staggering all the way. A group of martial gods rushing past couldn't help but turn their heads to look, though they didn't dare step forward to ask. In their hearts, they all couldn't help but turn strangely towards him. Xie Lian then let go of his hand and quickened his steps, his back straight, very deceptively rubbing his mouth, then stammered, "My mouth feels a bit sore. I don't know how it became like this, huh?" The group of martial gods looked at him with even stranger eyes. What must one do for their mouth to hurt like this? But his lips truly were a little sore. Just now, perhaps having used strength to jump up, it was possible he had bumped into Hua Cheng. When Xie Lian pressed his lips on, he suddenly felt as if the other was smiling. Not daring to think further, he lowered his head and walked straight forward. On the other side, the group of heavenly officials no longer paid him any mind, continuing their hurried steps. It was unknown if it was because the opening of Tonglu had caused too much chaos, but the entire heavenly capital from top to bottom was filled with an atmosphere of tense unease. At the martial god hall, many heavenly officials had gathered in full. Although the vengeful spirits from Tonglu had spread to 7 or 8 places across the south and north, most of them had been brought to the imperial city, the most densely populated area. Xie Lian and Hua Cheng had chosen this place, and with great effort had barely managed to struggle until now. Others had only needed to deal with a few hundred vengeful spirits, and those matters had long since been resolved. Pei Ming and Feng Xian, their bodies weary, had also returned to the heavenly capital. As Xie Lian stepped into the hall, the moment he lifted his face, he found himself staring, stunned, at someone he had not seen for a long time. Lang Qianqiu. Lang Qianqiu's expression was grave, and a quick glance showed that he too was stunned, but immediately after, he turned away. Everyone lowered their heads, silent. Junwu, seated above, seeing Xie Lian arrive, slightly rose as if to speak, but Lang Qianqiu stood up first, saying, "Emperor, I hear you have captured Qinggui Shirong." Junwu looked towards him and said, "Your grasp of information is not bad. However, Qinggui Shirong and the female ghost Xianji were neither captured by me. They were both brought here by someone from Ghost City, entrusted to Yin Yu." It was only at this moment that Xie Lian realized Yin Yu was also present. There was nothing he could do about it. He truly hadn't sensed his existence at all. Furthermore, this was surely the first time Yin Yu had entered the Great Martial Hall. This grand hall, apart from the high-ranking heavenly officials, could only be entered by others when Junwu granted permission. Previously, when he was still a heavenly official, Yin Yu's low rank meant he fundamentally lacked the qualification to enter. Now, despite indulging himself in depravity in Ghost City, he was, in the end, grandly invited and truly a matter to both cry and laugh about. Lang Qianqiu stated directly, "Shirong is my clan's exterminating enemy. I request, Emperor, that you hand him over to me for judgment." Junwu glanced at Xie Lian, mused for a moment, then said, "Handing him over to you for judgment is not impossible, but I have some questions I wish to ask. How do you intend to deal with Qinggui Shirong? And what then, after you have dealt with him?" Previously, Lang Qianqiu had uttered cruel words, stating that after he settled scores with Shirong, it would then be Xie Lian's turn. Junwu, of course, was aware of this matter. Lang Qianqiu replied with a stiff tone, "This is not a matter related to military affairs. I have no obligation to answer. It's not that I cannot answer, but I merely fear that after I do, Your Majesty the Emperor might then scheme to shield Shirong, preventing me from avenging my clan." What then? In the past, he had almost never spoken in the upper Great Martial Hall, and whenever he did, his words were always foolish. Yet now, as he opened his mouth, his expression and tone inexplicably exuded a faint aura of malevolence. Pei Ming spoke up, "No matter how upset His Highness Tai Hua may be today, the Emperor will naturally not shield anyone." Just as mediation was underway, a commotion erupted outside the Divine Hall. Someone suddenly rushed in, exclaiming, "Emperor, I cannot wait any longer." It was unexpectedly Mu Qing. Dressed entirely in black, his face had also darkened. Behind him were several martial god officials who had originally been escorting him, but unable to hold him back, they could only rush in after him, saying, "Emperor, we were just about to take General Xianzhen away." Junwu sighed, rubbed his forehead and waved his hand, saying, "Understood. You may withdraw." A moment later he lifted his head and turned to Mu Qing. "So?" Mu Qing stated resolutely, "Therefore, I can no longer continue to endure such an unclear grievance. It's no different than you all placing your asses on my head. Didn't you already capture that woman in Tong Lu? I demand to confront her face to face." Lang Qianqiu also said, "Emperor, I too request that you hand Qinggui Shirong over to me." These two loudly demanded reason together, and below, people immediately began to clamor chaotically. Junwu, looking utterly pained by a headache, said, "Silence. Can you not first calm down slowly? Let me finish dealing with the matters concerning Tong Lu first." Mu Qing said, "You wish to deal with the Tong Lu incident of opening a path and releasing vengeful spirits. And your solution is to have me arrested and locked up? What good will that do? It would be better to help me clear my name soon, thus consolidating the strength of the high-ranking heavenly officials. As long as the Emperor brings her here for me to confront her, this matter will certainly yield clues. There was actually some reason in his words. If he was not appeased, it was likely he would not comply and would continue to pester. Junwoo had no choice but to order, "Bring the female ghost Xie Lian up here." Not long after Xie Lian was brought up. In her arms she held a bundle resembling a worn-out satchel, from which a thick stream of black qi emanated from within the scattered clothes and fabrics. A pale white thing, neither quite a hand nor quite a bone, having a shape that is both similar to and not similar to an arm and bones, was revealed from within, bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws, but was held back and covered by her hand, whereupon it voluntarily retreated. Presumably to give Feng Xian some face, the escorting heavenly officials did not try to oppress her. Feng Xin's Adam's apple bobbed slightly. He exchanged a searching glance with her for a moment. Xie Lian then actively averted her gaze. After that, Feng Xin's eyes fell upon the bundle at her chest, and his emotions grew even more complex. Mu Qing meanwhile seemed to have run out of patience. As soon as he stepped forward, he declared, "I do not know why your son wishes to slander me, but it is clear that I am absolutely not the culprit." He was certainly instructed by someone else. His behavior was to some extent unseemly, but Xie Lian could understand. Mu Qing had always been someone who valued face. To have someone dump a basin of stinking feces onto his head like that, and to have it affect his appointment to office in the upper heavenly court naturally, his rage would intensify tenfold. Junwoo asked, "Whom do you think could have instructed him?" Mu Qing did not speak, but his gaze shifted in one direction. Everyone could tell he was scrutinizing Xie Lian. Veins immediately pulsed on Feng Xin's forehead. "What do you mean? Do you think she intentionally instructed her own son to slander you?" Mu Qing withdrew his gaze and replied, "I did not say that." Feng Xian said, "Then what do you think she did? She has no enmity or grudge against you. Why would she want to instruct her son to do such a thing?" Mu Tin stared intently at him, saying, "She and I have no grievances, no enmity, but you and I do indeed have some." Feng Xian roared, "What exactly do you mean? Explain everything clearly once and for all." Mu Tin glanced at Xie Lian. "Surely you had relations with the eldest Miss Xie Lian during the period His Royal Highness the Crown Prince was demoted, isn't that right?" The various heavenly officials thereupon also eagerly looked towards Xie Lian. "Xie Lian? How come the target has shifted to me now?" Feng Xian also glanced at him, angrily saying in a low voice, "What does this matter have to do with that matter?" Mu Tin calmly said, "Of course there is a connection. Back then you too, because you followed the Crown Prince, suffered all sorts of hardships. When you saw me enter the middle court, you immediately hated me to the bone, and what you liked most was to openly criticize me, bringing me out to curse and demand old debts, reprimanding me for my wrongdoings. She was the person who shared your blanket and pillow. Through subtle influence over time, she would naturally and unconsciously develop hatred for me. Perhaps she might even hate His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, because you ultimately did not take her with you, but instead chose to return to continue your hopeless loyal duty, which was fundamentally abandoning her." Feng Xian finally could not endure it anymore. Roaring, "You dog scavenged trash!" He threw a punch. Mu Tin retaliated with a counterpunch. Xie Lian was about to step forward to stop them when that spiritual embryo again cackled eerily, just like a crow calling its flock, terrifying to the extreme. Pei Ming and Yin Yu ran over to restrain Feng Xian and Mu Tin. Quan Yizhen stood nearby, staring intently as if contemplating who would win if they continued fighting. All in all, the entire great hall was enveloped in a cloud of turbid murky miasma. Xie Lian quietly stood for a long while, bowed his head, and after a long moment sighed, reminding them, "Your Majesty, the urgent matter is first and foremost to find Bai Wuxiang and deal with the human face disease. Just now we found that person and he is the most important clue." Junwoo also could not bear to watch any longer, waving his hand and saying, "Take the ghost woman Xie Lian and that spiritual embryo away. Bring the Imperial Preceptor of Xian Lu up here." Mu Tin roared, "No need. I want to what?" Feng Xian also said in surprise, "Bring up who?" The two of them stood side by side, looking towards the entrance of the great hall. That person, brought in by a group of martial gods, wasn't that the one? They were all very familiar with the Imperial Preceptor of Xian Lu, Mei Nianqing? Feng Xian and Mu Tin were dumbfounded. Feng Xian asked again, "Imperial Preceptor? Is it really the Imperial Preceptor?" Mu Tin said nothing, but was also astonished and bewildered. It was no wonder. Truthfully, Xie Lian currently also felt a bit unreal, unable to consider this person to be the same as the Imperial Preceptor who once asked him about that Siyu. Pee of water for 2 people. Mei Nianqing slowly stepped forward, briefly brushing past Xie Lian. Junwu sat in the great hall saying, Xianlu, when you were down there you seemed to have something to say? Xie Lian slightly bowed his head, replying, indeed. Thus he recounted the matter of entering Mount Tonglu, exploring the kingdom of Wuyong, and other important details, speaking them all out. Everyone listened with increasingly widened eyes. As for Feng Xian and Mu Tin, they were beyond words. After listening, Junwu slowly said, I have never heard of this name Wuyong Kingdom. The various heavenly officials also eagerly chimed in. I also have never heard of it. Ultimately, it did exist 2,000 years ago. It must be that the traces were intentionally destroyed. Mei Nianqing had always remained silent. Xie Lian said, Imperial Preceptor, the Crown Prince of Wuyong is Bai Wuxiang. Isn't he? Mei Nianqing said, yes. As expected. Pei Ming, while thinking, said, those murals, who left them? And the last one, who destroyed it? Xie Lian said, who left them I do not know, but in my opinion, it must have been Bai Wuxiang himself or his subordinates who destroyed that last mural. After all, he precisely does not want others to know his true identity. He turned towards Nian Khan, and you are surely a subordinate of Wu Rong Crown Prince, aren't you? Who was also precisely Bai Wuxiang's subordinate. Oh. Nian Khan did not speak. A slight agitation suddenly surged. Within Xie Lian's heart he truly wished to ask him, when Xianlu was annihilated as a nation, did the national preceptor truly not know that the plague was precisely brought by Wuxiang? Or had they already conspired beforehand, with the national preceptor even offering a helping hand? But in the end he still asked a different question, where is Bai Wuxiang currently? Oh. Xie Lian asked, why did Bai Wuxiang have to destroy Xianlu? Oh. Xie Lian asked, why do you want to kill me? Nian Khan finally opened his mouth. He said, Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince, I do not wish to kill you. Xie Lian questioned, then why did you lunge at my throat at that time? Nian Khan retorted, if I strangled your throat would you die? And would that person standing next to you stand idly by while I strangled your throat? Indeed he would not die. But that could not prove that Nian Khan at that time did not carry murderous intent, because at that moment his reaction was entirely instinctual. Nian Khan probably also knew he could not convince him, and did not continue to explain himself. After a moment of silence, Xie Lian finally asked him the question he most wanted to know, National Preceptor, what is it you wish to awaken from within me? Junwu once told Xie Lian. The National Preceptor seemed to want to awaken something from within him. What could that be? Nian Khan's expression suddenly became strange, gazing intently at him. Xie Lian let go of his sleeves, his hand forming a fist, and said, National Preceptor, speak. Xie Lian's heart had always harbored a hidden uneasiness. The trajectory of Wu Rong Crown Prince's destiny, how was it so similar to his own? Could it be that between him and Bai Wuxiang, there truly was a mysterious connection? He absolutely had to clarify this matter. No matter what kind of relationship existed between himself and Bai Wuxiang, he absolutely could not endure being entangled with him. But he was also afraid if he truly shared some kind of relationship with him. Nian Khan looked at him after a long while, said, Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince, you asked this question at this very moment I cannot answer. Moreover, even if I spoke you might not necessarily believe. He paused for a moment, he said, but there is one sentence I can answer for you immediately. Nian Khan ground out each word. Bai Wuxiang, currently he is here, right here in this divine martial hall. He is precisely the one standing right before me. Who stood before him? Xie Lian. Xie Lian immediately retreated a few steps, as if wanting to flee this place. Nearby, Feng Xian roared, National Preceptor, you open your eyes wide and look clearly who the person before you is. It is precisely His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. He is your disciple. However, the divine martial hall had already resounded with several whispers. From afar, a few divine officials covered their mouths and whispered, Could it be that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Bai Wuxiang are one soul, two bodies? What is this one soul, two bodies? It is to use one's own soul, splitting it into two, or separating it into two halves. This half and that half contain different memories, their temperaments and abilities are also not alike, perhaps even their appearances are not alike. It's possible. I've also heard of this matter. If it is truly so, then what should be done now? His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is the white-clad calamity? From all directions came whispers and murmurs. Xie Lian also began to suspect, was he truly Bai Wuxiang? Was it truly so? Could it be that he was the one who destroyed Xianlu? Was it he himself who tormented himself for 800 years? Until now, had all these matters been caused by himself? The various divine officials gasped in surprise. Their expressions varied. Feng Xian also did not know what to say, or what to believe. and Junwoo at this moment stood up. Soothing Xianlu, calm yourself. Xie Lian, currently a little flustered, said I. Could it truly be that all these calamities were wrought by him? If it truly was him, then what should be done now? He had no idea at all. Amidst a haze of confusion, suddenly, a voice echoed within his chest. No, it won't. I can guarantee you are yourself, not anyone else. Believe me. Sanlang. Sanlang. Hua Chong had once said it was not him, he would never be mistaken. Thinking of this, Xie Lian's mind instantly cleared, and his feet stood firm. At this moment, Junwoo had already left his majestic throne and walked to his side, saying, Xianlu, you must calm down first. Xie Lian was about to slowly raise his head to answer. Who would have thought at this very moment, Mei Nianqing suddenly stretched out a hand, drew the sword from Feng Xin's waist, and aimed it straight at Junwoo, stabbing forward. The divine officials simultaneously cried out in alarm. However, both Junwoo and Xie Lian were martial gods, moreover, both were first and second rank martial god officials. How could they possibly deign to notice this level of sneak attack? That sword tip had not even reached Junwoo's body. Xie Lian had already, like a flash of lightning, flicked out 2 fingers, seizing the tip of the white snow sword, clamping it between his 2 fingers. Feng Xian was stunned for a second, then immediately stepped forward to restrain the imperial preceptor. To still dare to assault someone in the hall of the supreme martial god, moreover to do so before so many martial gods, was truly seeking one's own death. Feng Xian said, Imperial preceptor, what you are doing is useless. Mei Nianqing, on the other hand, struggled in vain, and yelled at Xie Lian, look. Quickly, look. Yu then stepped forward and said, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Are you all right? What's wrong? Mu Qing, from a distance, vigilantly said, Look at what? What does he mean? What does he want to do? The grand hall became a scene of chaos. After a long while, Xie Lian still did not move. It was not for any other reason but precisely because from the tip of the white snow sword he saw something. A face. A young man's face, handsome and refined, calm and composed. But on this face there were also 3 other faces. Those 3 faces were smaller, rooted on this young man's face, ruining his originally handsome appearance to a sinister and terrifying extent. All his facial features twisted, warped. Half the face seemed as if it were crying, the other half seemed to be laughing. This face Talin should have been familiar with. But at this moment, in the reflected image of Kim Fong, it looked extremely unfamiliar, truly making people shiver with fear. Talin was so scared that his whole body was covered in cold sweat. At this moment he only then remembered that the sword Fong Tin carried with him was none other than Hong Jing, the mirror that reveals true forms of evil spirits. Demons and monsters caught by Hong Jing's light could not conceal their identities. The place where Hong Jing shone upon was not his face, but rather the one standing behind him. Moreover, on his face was a pair of sinister eyes, intently staring at him. Talin's pupils gradually constricted. His movements also slowed down. He slightly opened his mouth, wanting to speak, but before he could utter a sound, his whole body suddenly stiffened. A powerful grip seized. At his wrist, Quan No from behind smiled and asked Xianlu, What are you looking at? Over the past few hundred years, Talin seemed to have forgotten this hair-raising sensation. My Nim Khan said by Wu Xiang was standing in front of him, and he then considered himself to be that person. It was just that he had forgotten, standing in front of my Nim Khan besides him, there was also Quan No behind him. It was just that he had never doubted this person even for a moment, so at this moment he was suddenly utterly startled, his whole bodice hair stood on end. Talin recoiled slightly, but that hand of powerful spiritual power still tightly held him, without budging an inch. He could not help himself, saying, Your face. Hearing him speak, Quan No did not mind, only spoke in a voice that seemed self-reproaching. A momentary carelessness, again I made them manifest. Talin's wrist felt a pang of sharp pain and finally, he could not hold the hilt of the sword anymore. His grip loosened and it fell down. The long sword fell onto the ground, emitting a clang in the grand hall. But it was already too late. Around there, many heavenly officials had already gathered, and just like him, they saw the terrifying image of a human face reflected in Hong Jing. The entire grand hall became a stretch of stillness. Nearly all the heavenly officials were dumbfounded with fear, including Fong Tin, the one standing closest, who saw it with extreme sharpness and clarity. My Nim Khan seized the opportunity to break free of Fong Tin's restraint, picked up Hong Jing, pointed it straight in front of Quan No, and said, Everyone look clearly. Look closely at his face. A few martial gods only then recovered their senses. Bui Min drew his sword and pointed it straight towards him, shouting, Who are you? The group of heavenly officials farther away still did not understand what was happening, clamoring to ask what's going on. Who is General Bui asking? Why would he point his sword towards the heavenly emperor? My Nim Khan stared fixedly at Quan No, gritting out each word. He is none other than Bai Wuxiang. Mu Tin said in astonishment. How could he be Bai Wuxiang? Bai Wuxiang impersonating the heavenly emperor. Then where is the real heavenly emperor? Ta Lin also thought about the possibility that Quan No had been swapped, but when did this begin? Why did he not discover even a slight flaw? The martial heavenly emperor was not entirely one who was deeply hidden and never showed his true nature. Regardless, it was impossible for him to be impersonated, and for not a single person in the entire upper heavenly court to notice. My Nim Khan was about to speak, but Quan No instead raised his hand, sighing, "You have once again disappointed me." My Nim Khan's face greatly changed, as though someone had choked his throat. Lang Tian Thursday raised his heavy sword high, and with a whoosh whoosh brought the sword's edge down to strike. Quan No turned his head and glanced over, and Lang Tian Thursday was immediately sent flying backward. Right after that, Pei Ming, Lang Qianqiu, Feng Xian, Mu Qing, Quan Yizhen, along with almost every martial god in the Divine Martial Temple, all advanced to surround Jun Wu. But only an incense stick's time later, within the Great Hall, Jun Wu with one hand firmly held Xie Lian's wrist, and all the martial gods who had just gone to surround him had collapsed onto the ground. Across the Great Hall, strewn everywhere, were martial gods who had lost all combat power. Only Jun Wu and Xie Lian remained standing firm. Mu Qing spat out a mouthful of blood, angrily shouting towards Xie Lian, who stood motionless. "What are you doing? Why are you standing there stunned, waiting to die?" He did not know Xie Lian wasn't unwilling to move, but rather he simply could not move. Jun Wu only used one hand to grasp Xie Lian, but he felt that even the slightest movement of a finger would make him noticed. Thinking so, he immediately dared not act recklessly, much less consider the thought of counterattacking. Regardless of whether the judgment was right or wrong, not acting rashly was the best choice. This was the foremost martial god of the three realms. The group of divine officials outside panicked. After a long period of confusion, they finally remembered they needed to escape from here. Their faces pale, they rushed towards the door of the Divine Martial Temple. But just as they lunged towards the door, the 12 heavy doors suddenly closed on their own. Their efforts to bang on the door were in vain. Among the nearly 100 divine officials in the hall, either could not get out, or could not stand up. It was truly utter chaos. And my Nianking's body seemed to be pulled straight forward by an invisible force. Jun Wu seized his collar, smilingly said, "Do you think the situation will turn around if you expose me in front of them? Do you think they, knowing the truth, would unite and be able to threaten me? I tell you, with just one hand, I can utterly annihilate these useless divine officials." It appeared that previously, Jun Wu had intended to bring my Nianqing to Xianjing first. It wasn't simply to give Xie Lian and Hua Cheng time to bid farewell. Along the way, he either made an agreement or threatened my Nianqing about something, which was why he felt at ease interrogating him in the Divine Martial Temple. But who would have thought that in the end he would change his mind? My Nianking's two hands seized Jun Wu's sleeves and shouted at Xie Lian, "Crown Prince Highness, go quickly. He has gone mad." Xie Lian said, "Imperial Preceptor." Immediately after that, my Nianqing was unable to speak, as if something had tightly gripped his neck. But he had always insisted on dressing in a way that covered his neck, so Xie Lian simply could not clearly see what had happened to his throat. Jun Wu sighed, "You fool. You are pushing them into a pit of fire. Originally, I intended to let them live or die as they may, but now not a single person here should think of surviving and walking out of Xianjing." Swiftly, Xie Lian immediately initiated spiritual communication San Lang. He had never before actively uttered Hua Cheng's spiritual communication command phrase, but now, because the situation was extremely critical, and he fundamentally had no time to worry about shyness in his mind, he repeatedly chanted it several times. But what answered him was only a stretch of silence, not a single word of reply. This feeling of blocked spiritual communication at this moment was exactly identical to the time in Mount Tonglu. Jun Wu, with a single glance, immediately saw through what he was thinking in his heart, and said, "No need to try anymore. As long as I do not permit it, you absolutely cannot initiate spiritual communication." Xianjing was fundamentally supported by Jun Wu's spiritual power. This place was his territory, he was the strongest, and naturally whatever he wanted it would be so. In other words, currently the entire upper court of heaven, and all of Xianjing, had been completely isolated from other places. It was truly exactly like the saying, "Cry to heaven, but it hears not; cry to earth, but it listens not." Suddenly, the heavy doors of the Divine Martial Temple swung open. The divine officials all trembled, overjoyed, but as soon as their gaze went beyond the great doors of the Divine Temple, they were simultaneously stunned. Outside the Great Hall, a tall, slender man in black robes, with an imposing aura, immediately recognizable as having ill intentions, stood to block their retreat. It was none other than the brocade immortal upon Lingwen. The divine officials were even more at a loss when they saw Lingwen step into the hall, kneel on one knee towards Junwu, and respectfully, reverently say, "Heavenly Emperor." Junwu said, "Deal with this matter. You should know how to handle it." Lingwen nodded and smilingly said, "Of course I understand." Mu Qing struggled to lean on the wall and stand up, and seeing this, was astonished. "Isn't Lingwen still hiding in Mount Tonglu?" Junwu replied that was supposed to be the case. "However, I find Lingwen, compared to most of these great divine officials, to be the most useful. It's truly hard to find such a talent. In the end he only committed a small insignificant error, therefore I brought him back." To be honest, compared to the calamity of white-clothed Lingwen creating the brocade immortal was truly a small insignificant error. Currently, both Lingwen and the brocade immortal are subordinates of this Junwu. At this moment a white shadow suddenly flashed, and another entity jumped to Junwu's feet, intimately rubbing against his shoes. Feng Exine, upon seeing this, angrily cursed, "What are you doing? Why don't you quickly come back?" His own son, upon meeting his father, vigorously punched and kicked, but upon seeing an enemy, diligently hugged T.'s leg and refused to let go. He truly didn't know who its real father was, so angry he wished he could spit out a basin of blood. Immediately after that, another divine martial official with an emotionless face rushed in. These divine martial officials all ascended under Junwu's appointment, and had always only listened to his commands. Lingwen, instructed by Junwu, said, "Escort the divine officials, one by one, back to their private palaces, and guard them carefully." Buimin was nearby, his expression complex, and he said, "Lin Van, you truly are heartless." Lin Van patted his shoulder, and said, "I am heartless. Isn't this something you have known for a long time now? I always welcome you." Buimin gave a few stiff, awkward laughs, not saying a single word. Xie Lian once again received special treatment from Junwu. He personally brought him back to Xianlu Palace. Junwu said, "Let's go." Xie Lian turned his head and glanced at Meiyan Qing. What exactly was going on? Who was he? What did he want to do? And who was this person? Was he Junwu or Bai Wuxiang after all? What did he want? He had too many questions he wanted to ask, and he absolutely had to ask each one, ask them very clearly. Only Meiyan Qing could answer these doubts, but Junwu would certainly not give him this opportunity. Stepping out of Shunwu Hall, Xie Lian faltered. The grand road of the heavenly capital was entirely covered by a gloomy sky. With eerie cloud waves everything had changed in an instant, utterly unlike the brilliant light of the past. Only Junwu and the subordinates arranged to escort the martial gods had expressions as calm and steady as usual. The rest were all a scene of desolation and unease. The group of minor divine officials who just moments ago had been frantic, those very ones who had just seen the door open and rejoiced like mad, now all lay fallen left and right, unconscious on the ground. Needless to say, of course Junwu had tampered with things from afar. The ding-dong under sound of ringing bells still drifted. It seemed even the sound of the bells had an issue. The two of them, along the grand road of the heavenly capital, slowly stepped towards Xianlu Palace. Along the way, Xie Lian mused to himself that he must quickly find a plan to escape, but one strong man could overpower 10 clever ones even if he was capable of devising ingenious plans. In front of a foe as physically mighty as Junwu, none of them would have a chance to be used. What's more, Junwu was not someone who only possessed physical might, he was someone who, with just a glance, could see through what Xie Lian was thinking in his heart. Entering Xianlu Palace, Xie Lian, as before, could not think of a solution. He thought to himself, if he couldn't think of a solution, it was fine. As long as he and Hua Chang could not communicate telepathically for a long time, Hua Chang would certainly become suspicious and trace the clues. As long as nothing else happened, everything would proceed smoothly. Who would have thought? As soon as the door closed, Junwu suddenly asked, "Are you thinking of blood rain-seeking flower?" Oh! This one sentence from Junwu immediately caused his heart to suddenly be filled with panic, beating rapidly. Xie Lian did not know how to answer. Yes. Would that Junwu perhaps cause disadvantage to Hua Chang? No. Junwu might not necessarily believe it. Seeing that he did not answer, Junwu smiled and said, "No need to worry. I know you are certainly thinking of him. You must be very eager to communicate telepathically with him, right?" His tone of voice when speaking with Xie Lian was no different from before, gentle, tolerant, steady, trustworthy, without any change whatsoever. But the more so it was, the more terrified Xie Lian felt. Again, hearing Junwu say, "If you want it very much, then just communicate telepathically with him, chat away." Oh! He had already guessed what Xie Lian was thinking just now when he stepped through the door. He fundamentally knew him like the back of his hand. Junwu's smile remained and he said, "Xianlu, you must know how to speak, don't make him too worried." That blood rain-seeking flower will certainly be very pleased when you personally seek him out to communicate telepathically. With that said, he placed his hand on Xie Lian's shoulder. Xie Lian felt a subtle fluctuation in his heart. He knew clearly what kind of spiritual art Junwu was using. That was the kind that could help him Junwu eavesdrop within the telepathy array. It could be considered that he could hear without needing to speak, meaning, even without joining the telepathy array between Hua and Lian, he would still know what they were saying. And Xie Lian himself understood what Junwu wanted to hear. Pausing for a moment, he tensed his scalp and recited the telepathy command of Hua Chang. Hearing the command, Junwu seemed to find it very interesting and even chuckled. Xie Lian, however, had no expression, as if he were feeling embarrassed or awkward. Almost immediately, Hua Chang's voice then rang by Xie Lian's ear. He sighed, Gidge, it's been so long, you finally remembered your San Lang. Xie Lian exchanged glances with Junwu. He replied, San Lang, I only left less than an hour ago. Hua Chang again said, I only care about you leaving, not about leaving an hour ago. Even if you only leave for an instant, it is still leaving. Junwu, right beside them, had heard it all. The situation at hand was clearly extremely dangerous, yet Xie Lian still felt a touch of shyness. Junwu said, what a pity he has to wait for not just one watch. Go on. Tell him. He must completely deal with the vengeful spirits down there before he can meet you. Don't try to beat around the bush with vague hints. I can hear everything. To completely deal with all those vengeful spirits would certainly take 7 days and 7 nights. After a moment of pause, Xie Lian said he cannot even wait for one Hua. What if this time I have to stay here longer, what will I do? Hua Chang said, did Junwu assign you so many tasks? Xie Lian said, Hua Chang said, then let me help you. Junwu said, tell him, once this mission is dealt with, I will grant you 3 years of leave. Xie Lian said, oh, don't San Lang, you guarding the formation has already helped me a great deal, let me handle other matters. The emperor said that after dealing with this pile of tasks, I can have 3 years of rest without needing to do anything at all. Hua Chang asked, in return only 3 years. Xie Lian replied, 3 years isn't long enough? That's already quite a generous reward, isn't it? Let's just say so. But, he vaguely said, Gidge, this is your reward, but what about mine? Book 5 Chapter 210. Xie Lian asked, reward? Reward for what exactly? Hua Chang asked back, what do you say? Xie Lian could now imagine how he was raising an eyebrow, and how the corner of his mouth was curving up when he asked this, knowing full well. Hua Chang then said, furthermore, if I remember correctly, Gidge still owes me no small amount of spiritual power yet to be repaid? Xie Lian carefully said, you're not mistaken. Hua Chang said, so, has Gidge thought of a way to repay me yet? Xie Lian said, not yet. Hua Chang seemed to be smiling, saying, if you haven't thought of one, then why not let me decide for myself? Once this matter is resolved, and you've gotten your rest, Gidge will gradually repay me completely, Oka. Why? Xie Lian, while responding to him, was startled and self-conscious, incessantly turning to look at Junwu, and flusteredly replied, Having led him step by step to this point, and obtained the desired answer, Hua Chang finally felt satisfied, temporarily letting him off, saying, so? It's rare for Gidge to seek me out for a spiritual communication, what is the matter, ultimately? Junwu stared at Xie Lian. He allowed Xie Lian and Hua Chang to communicate spiritually precisely to put Hua Chang at ease, making it difficult for him to detect anything unusual, and honestly weighed in the lower realm. Xie Lian naturally knew how he wanted him to reply, and slowly said, actually it's nothing, I was just afraid that staying here too long would make you worry. Hua Chang said, Gidge, didn't you just say a moment ago that you had only just left less than 1 watch ago, so how could you then be afraid I'd worry? Xie Lian was truly spun to and fro by him until he felt like fainting, both his head aching and a little bit amused. Suddenly Hua Chang said, I know now. Xie Lian's breath hitched, saying, what do you know? The other side seemed to chuckle softly a few times. Immediately Hua Chang slowly said, Gidge, could it be that you only just left me not long ago, and already miss me so much? His previous few sentences still held veiled implications, but this one was spoken entirely outright no matter what. He could no longer continue to pretend to be normal. Junwu glanced down. Probing, Xie Lian's face was a little red. A moment later he said in a low voice, Dun. Hua Chang also said in a deep voice, me too. I truly wish to immediately fly up there and take you away. Xie Lian's heart warmed slightly, and with it, his heart felt as if it were hanging in the wind, his eyes fixed on Junwu. If Hua Chang truly wanted to come to the immortal capital, then what should he do about him? How would Junwu deal with him? Xie Lian suppressed his thoughts, making an effort to appear natural, saying, still, let's not. The upper heavenly court is already very chaotic now. If you were truly to come, I'm afraid they would all be startled. Let's wait until the situation eases. Hua Chang lazily replied, I understand, Gidge. I won't go up and frighten them. I simply detest that kind of eye-blinding dazzling light of their immortal capital. Moreover, this territory still requires me to remain and keep watch. I will obediently wait here for Gidge to return to this place. Xie Lian also didn't know whether he should sigh or wipe his sweat, saying good. Very obedient. Hua Chong said, but if I am good, Gidge also cannot return empty-handed. I want to be treated to a meal by you. Xie Lian replied, definitely, definitely. The two of them casually, indistinctly exchanged a few more words, lingering, unable to part. It took a long while before they finally bade farewell, only then concluding the spiritual communication. Xie Lian let out a soft breath. Junwu said it seems that she and Lu down in the lower realm has a very interesting life. Xie Lian also didn't know how to respond. He patted Xie Lian's shoulder, turned around wanting to leave Xianlu Palace. Xie Lian behind him called out, Imperial Lord. Junwu stopped. Xie Lian said, who exactly are you? Are you the Imperial Lord? Or are you that thing? Previously he suspected the National Preceptor and Bai Wuxiang were related in some way, and already found it a little hard to accept. But if Junwu and Bai Wuxiang truly had a connection, he felt that his entire being would be turned upside down. Junwu, the first martial god in the three realms, was precisely the one he admired the most. Junwu did not answer him, walking straight out, leaving Xie Lian all by himself, on one hand contemplating strategies to cope, on the other, his entire body weary. He walked deep into Xianlu Palace. Xianlu Palace, even though it had transformed into a cage, was also a luxurious cage behind the hall. It even had a white jade bathing pool. After many days of Xie Lian continuously confronting the white ghost, entering Tonglu and scrambling about, until now both his body and spirit were utterly worn out. Anyway, for now he couldn't take the next step, so he might as well bathe first to clear his head a little. Shedding his garments, soaking himself in the warm water, Xie Lian leaned against the white jade by the pool, absent-mindedly folding his clothes. Suddenly, from inside his robe rolled out two small objects. CTS, emitting a crisp sound. Xie Lian observed carefully, they were two adorable dice. He picked up those two dice, holding them tightly in his palm, remembering what Hua Chong once said to him, if you want to see me, no matter what numbers you roll, you will be able to meet me. In fact, his spiritual communication with Hua Chong felt very unnatural in several places. Perhaps Hua Chong also noticed. But even if Hua Chong noticed the impropriety, he also wouldn't be able to come up here, because the immortal capital was originally already separated from the mortal realm and furthermore was controlled by Junwu. Although clearly knowing the current situation, he calculated to throw out two 6-point dice, estimating it would still be impossible to see Hua Chong, but Xie Lian still tried. Swift as lightning, the dice rolled on the rim of the jade bathtub. His luck was as usual, two 1-point dice, and indeed there was still no movement. Xie Lian sighed, turned back, and was just about to submerge his entire face and body into the water when suddenly, he heard a sound. Gidge. He suddenly immediately stood up, making the water surface churn, water spilling over the white jade rim. Sanlang? Could it be that he truly summoned Hua Chong? However, looking around in all directions, he did not see anyone else. Yet, just now, that sound absolutely could not have been an illusion born from his excessive anticipation. Xie Lian heard his heart pounding wildly, and then heard a voice. Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Oh! Xie Lian only then discovered that sound, surprisingly, echoed from his own mouth. That was indeed his own voice. Merely the hazy steam and the empty space within the white jade along with the sound of water flowing by the pool made the sound unclear. Xie Lian was stunned for a moment, then immediately enlightened. It was the soul-shifting great spell. Xie Lian was both surprised and delighted, asking Lord Windmaster. From his mouth another voice burst forth, excitedly speaking without end. That's right. It's me. Ha 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 ha. You couldn't have imagined it, could you? This Windmaster, no. I actually have spiritual power. It was previously mentioned that the soul-shifting great spell is not frequently used. Moreover, it consumes a lot of spiritual power, but it is much stronger than the telepathy array, so ordinary blocking spells usually would not think to stop this type of spell. When dealing with the white-clothed calamity, Shi Qingxian and Xie Lian had used the soul-shifting great spell together. After Shi Qingxian lost all his spiritual power, he and Xie Lian were unilaterally cut off by a spell. Unexpectedly now in this place it was able to be put to use. Xie Lian said, Qingxian, the soul-shifting great spell requires a lot of spiritual power. Where did you get it? As soon as he finished speaking, he reacted. Where else could he possibly have gotten spiritual power from? Indeed, Shi Qingxian said, it's a long story. Oh, Tuli, it's not that long. It was that crimson rainsop flower who gave me some black things to eat. It was extremely miraculous. After I ate it, my divine power subtly increased. Though it's only temporary, I can use the surplus for a while, transmitting a few words like this is no problem. It's just that the taste of this thing is truly strange. Ugh. Oh. Xie Lian couldn't help but recall Pei Ming having eaten ghost-flavored candy, thinking that what Hua Chong had in hand must have been a high-grade spiritual power candy. He said, who called out Gidge those 2 times just now? Sure, Qingxian said, me, of course. Xie Lian was torn between laughter and tears, saying, why did you suddenly call out like that? I thought. Sure, Qingxian said, I know you thought Crimson Rainsalt Flower came to find you, didn't you? Xie Lian lightly coughed once. Sure, Qingxian said, it was he who told me to call you that. He said calling out like that would help put your mind at ease a little more. And those words were indeed true. Just having heard the sound Gidge, though he was startled, he felt even more at ease. Xie Lian asked, is he by your side? Are you two currently doing well in the Imperial City? Those resentful spirits aren't suddenly causing trouble, are they? Sure, Qingxian said, things are still good here in the Imperial City, and there aren't many resentful spirits left to vanquish. It's just that just now, after you finished communicating with Crimson Rainsalt Flower Tea, rough the telepathy array, one moment he was still smiling cheerfully, saying who knows what to you, and then as soon as the communication ended, his face suddenly darkened, scaring me to death. Then he told me to try and see if I could use the soul-shifting great spell. Oh, that's right, Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince. He asked me to pass on a message. Your Highness, please put on your clothes first. He urged me several times. What's so important about this? In the upper heavens, one wouldn't catch a cold either. Oh. Xie Lian almost fainted quick as lightning. He swiftly grabbed his clothes and covered his body, saying he San Lang, how could he know? Sure, Qingxian said, it's because he kept asking me over and over again, which I found very troublesome, so I directly and immediately transmitted everything I saw and heard on this side to him. Whatever you do, whatever you say, he knows it all. It's just that he can't directly speak to you or manipulate your body. Oh, Lord Windmaster, you are truly too comfortable. If he had known earlier, he would not have bathed. Sure, Qingxian said, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, I never thought you would care so much about such things. After all, everyone here is a man, not to mention Chieftain Hua didn't actually see anything. Besides, I didn't see anything at all. He was truly too unreserved. Xie Lian raised a hand to pat his forehead, quickly put on his clothes, gripped the 2 dice and went out. Behind the main hall, swiftly changing the subject, San Lang, how did you discover something was amiss? Pausing for a moment, Sure, Qingxian said, Crimson Rainsalt Flower said that when you proactively sought spiritual communication with him, he already knew. This is what Chieftain Hua wants me to tell you. Gidge is always so bashful. If no major event had occurred, how could he have proactively spoken that incantation? Oh, it was indeed this reason. Sure, Qingxian seemed to be speaking with Hua Chong. All right, I won't say too much, he'll get to the main point. Then he asked, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, what situation exactly are you all encountering over there right now? Is the Heavenly Emperor not present? Xie Lian truly didn't know where to begin, saying, it's precisely because he is here that everything has become this way. After hearing the crucial details, Sure, Qingxian was utterly dumbfounded. Oh my heavens! Oh my heavens! Oh my heavens! His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, you're truly not just rambling, are you? The Heavenly Emperor, that's truly the Heavenly Emperor. Xie Lian said, whether it's truly him or not, I cannot be certain. What does San Lang think? A second later, Sure, Qingxian replied, Crimson Rainsalt Flower wasn't actually surprised. He merely said, it's not strange. I've long found him displeasing to the eye. Xie Lian couldn't help but burst out laughing, saying, do you perhaps find everyone displeasing to the eye? His remark was directed at Hua Chong. Sure, Qingxian said, he said, yes, everyone except you. I said, Chieftain Hua, this isn't right. I'm still here, you know. Do you find me displeasing to the eye too? What exactly is wrong with me? Xie Lian said, all right, it's all just playful banter. In short, currently, all the martial gods have been defeated by him. The heavenly officials are all imprisoned in their private palaces, and the entire heavenly capital is cut off from the mortal world by the high heavens. Sure, Qingxian said. Crimson Rainsalt Flower said that ascending to the high heavens isn't without a method, but it requires one person's assistance. Xie Lian said, who? Immediately afterwards he exclaimed, who? That cry of who wasn't directed at Hua Chong or Sure Qingxian, but rather because from behind him, an abnormal sound had reached his ears. Someone was coming. Thank you for tuning into Eastern Romance Tales. Please like, share, and follow to support my war kit. Truly motivates me to bring you more stories.